Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Kana was only 17. That meant she had been taking this exam and failing it every year since she was 14. And this year was another blow. How could anyone not worry? Have a little more faith in her, Myra said gently. Besides, she's not alone. Everyone in the guild cares about her. She tilted her head toward the bar. Look. Rhodes turned. There, across the room, Mikau was sitting with Kana, a glass of wine in his hand, quietly talking to her. Kana barely responded, but when she reached to pour herself more from the barrel, Mikau firmly placed a hand on top of it to stop her. Kana muttered a few drunken complaints under her breath. Mikau just kept talking to her with a gentle smile, unfazed. Not long after, Wakaba strolled over and sat beside them, puffing on his ever-present pipe. Kana waved her hands in disgust, trying to shoo away the smoke, and Mikau immediately joined her in mock outrage, dramatically fanning the air. The two of them ganged up on Wakaba, scolding him together. Naturally, it devolved into their usual back and forth. Bickering, throwing playful jabs, and eventually grappling like kids. But after a few minutes, they both settled down and resumed their seats. Myra chuckled softly. Those 2 old men might act silly most of the time, but when it counts, they can be pretty reliable. She looked toward Kana with a fond smile. You know, she's been with the guild for 11 years now. She practically grew up under their noses. I think, deep down, they both see her as family. Maybe even like a daughter. So don't worry too much. Give her a little time. Rhodes looked at Mikau and Wakaba again. Even while wrestling, they still kept their eyes on Kana. Maybe they really were reliable after all. Then, without warning, a heavy paw landed on his shoulder. Rhodes. Let's spar, said a voice with blazing determination. Mickey? Rhodes blinked. Huh? Why? Mickey cracked her knuckles, fire in her eyes. Because I'm in a bad mood. Why did we get knocked out in the first round, while you guys made it to the third? And look at your face. You're all gloomy like you lost everything. She slammed her fists together. You've beaten us more times than I can count. And now you're walking around all mopey? Nope, not happening. I'm dragging you to the training yard right now. Rhodes groaned. Wasn't it Warren and Max who beat you? They can wait. You're up first. Mickey marched off toward the backyard, already assuming Rhodes had accepted the challenge. Myra grinned. Go get her. You just want to see a fight. Rhodes muttered, though a smile tugged at his lips. Myra winked playfully. Maybe. But you've noticed, haven't you? I'm not the only one who cares about you. Rhodes glanced toward Mickey's retreating figure, then back at Myra. After a moment, he smiled. Guess I owe her a good sparring session. A few minutes later, the heartless Rhodes gave Mickey a solid beating. Well, she asked for it. The whole thing started because Mickey got annoyed that Rhodes had used the Krug to spar with her and took it as an insult, as if he didn't think she was worth his full strength. Even after he had the Merc Wolf spar with her next, she still wasn't satisfied. She insisted on trying out the same combo moves that Rhodes used against Luxus. Left with no choice, Rhodes summoned the Blue Sentinel and sent her flying straight out of the guild yard and into the lake behind it with a single punch. Thankfully, he didn't hit her too hard and even gave her a heads up before striking, so she wasn't hurt. Just thoroughly soaked. But Mickey was nothing if not easygoing. She clapped Rhodes on the shoulder with a grin and ran off to pick a fight with Warren instead. Just as Rhodes was about to warn her about the cold, a glimmer of light flickered over her body, and her dripping wet clothes instantly dried. No, it wasn't some drying spell. It was a full outfit change. Like Myra had said before, a lot of girls in the guild had picked up a little bit of wardrobe magic. It was just too convenient not to. A few days earlier, it had snowed heavily. Time had flown by, and now it was already late December. The year X783 was almost over. The snow still blanketed the town. When Rhodes took Warm downstairs, he spotted a snowman standing in front of the first floor door. It was built the day before yesterday when Bear had come over to play. Originally, The snowman had a scarf and a little hat, but Mrs. Molly had borrowed them yesterday. Probably for her laundry line. To be honest, Rhodes sometimes got the childish urge to kick other people's snowmen when walking through the streets. But he managed to restrain himself. Worm, on the other hand, had no such self-control. Thankfully, Rhodes always managed to catch him before he caused too much chaos. Over the past 2 weeks, Rhodes had teamed up with Elfman on 2 different requests. Both were jobs he'd picked deliberately, where the client had at least 2 children in their household. Myra had hesitated a bit when she saw the missions he'd chosen, but eventually gave her approval. In the end, though, they were just simple errands. Rhodes couldn't force sentimentality, and there was no way to engineer an emotional breakthrough. All he could do was keep paying attention. He wasn't sure if Elfman had noticed the pattern, but Rhodes could feel that Elfman was slowly and steadily growing stronger. As soon as Myra opened the guild doors, Worm immediately scampered over, eager to cuddle up to her. After Mr. Cook, Myra was the one who sneaked him snacks the most, so of course she had to be high on his suck-up-to list. "Good morning," Myra greeted with a warm smile, crouching down to pat Worm's head. Worm was getting noticeably heavier these days. Myra was starting to avoid picking him up unless absolutely necessary. "Morning," Rhodes replied, noticing her coat and scarf. She looked ready to head out. "Wait, am I late?" Myra chuckled. "No, it's just New Year's. The guild's planning a little celebration, so I'm heading out to buy a few things." "Oh." Rhodes gave Worm a knowing pat, and the little guy scampered off to play with the others in the guild. Then, without much else to say, Rhodes walked out onto the snowy street with Myra. Chapter 175, Rhodes doesn't lose out. Rhodes had joined the guild in early July, and now it was the end of December. From the sweltering heat of summer to the chill of winter, Rhodes had spent half a year living in Magnolia. Back then, he'd arrived alone, with no family, no one to rely on. Now, he had friends, people to laugh and train with, companions to bicker and spar with, teammates who'd fought by his side. And someone he liked. At home, he'd even bought a few handy magical appliances and had slowly begun building a more comfortable life for himself. When it came to strength, he was training hard to improve, reading as much as he could to expand his knowledge, and steadily taking on more jobs to build up experience. As for feelings, the person he liked was around nearly every day, and the two of them had developed a kind of quiet understanding. Even something as small as sharing a cup of coffee together could leave him smiling for hours. Sure, life still had its rough patches. But Rhodes found that he genuinely enjoyed the process of pushing through them. Maybe it was because Myra had mentioned the new year was approaching, but he found himself silently reflecting on everything that had happened over the past 6 months. All in all, life was fulfilling. He felt happy. And with clear goals guiding him, every day felt energized and purposeful. Myra leaned in a little and tilted her head to look at him. "Why are you suddenly smiling so much?" "It's the new year," Rhodes replied, still grinning. He noticed that they were both wearing the same couple's coat. Coincidentally. And that only made him smile more. "Will everyone be gathering for a celebration?" Myra thought for a moment before answering. "Well, some people celebrate at home, so it probably won't be as festive as the Harvest Festival." Rhodes glanced at the snow-covered streets. "Yeah. The mood's definitely different. Doesn't feel as big of a deal." Myra nodded. "That's because the Harvest Festival is tied to the most important time of the year. And the Magic Parade draws tons of tourists. It's always a huge event." That made sense. The Harvest Festival had basically become a tourist attraction in its own right. The New Year, by comparison, was still more of a traditional, quiet holiday. Still, even if it wasn't as over the top, it was definitely something worth celebrating. Of course, the town of Magnolia didn't need much help being lively, because Fire Dragon Snow Fist. Natsu. Quit blowing up snowmen. Those belong to the townspeople. Chill, Happy. You worry too much. Natsu rolled up a massive snowball. Now check this out. It's totally unfair to launch a sneak attack like that. Happy flew up to the roof, flapped his wings, and swept a flurry of snow into the air. Snow missed attack. Natsu raised a snowball and shouted indignantly. Happy. You can't call it a snowball fight if you're not even using snowballs. What about stuffing rocks in snowballs? That's even worse. That's criminal. As they bickered, they pelted each other with snowballs, making their way toward the guild, leaving a trail of chaos in their wake. The two of them are already at it this early in the morning. Rhodes muttered, just before instinctively reaching out to pull Myra closer. A snowball zipped past the spot she had just been standing in and splattered harmlessly on the ground behind her. Caught off guard, Myra bumped into his chest and quickly straightened up, brushing her hair back behind her ear. It's just a snowball, she said with a smile. No need to be so tense. I'm used to it. Rhodes replied calmly. And besides, knowing those two, there might actually be rocks in there. Myra glanced sideways at him, then turned to call out to the chaotic duo. Natsu, Happy. Aye, sir. Happy chirped with a grin. Oh. Myra. Rhodes. Natsu waved, snowball in hand, eyes lighting up with excitement. Wanna join the snowball fight? It does look fun. Myra said with a laugh. But we've got errands to run. Rhodes added. And try not to break anyone's windows this year. Sure, snowballs usually aren't strong enough to break glass, but this was Natsu. The guy could turn a snowball fight into a natural disaster if he tried. Rhodes was a thoughtful person. He really didn't want to see Master Micro forced to write another self-criticism letter to the Magic Council right at the start of the new year. Natsu pulled a face. Ugh, you're starting to sound like Ursa. Aye. Happy agreed, crossing his little arms. Rhodes smirked. If Ursa were here, she'd already be in full snowman armor, and you two would be buried under a mountain of snowballs. The two troublemakers exchanged horrified grimaces at the mental image. Myra couldn't stop laughing. If she knew telepathy magic, she probably would have called Ursa over just to join Natsu's chaotic snowball war. After watching the two childish troublemakers disappear down the street, Rhodes and Myra finally began their actual shopping trip. Aside from food and drinks, they also needed to pick up decorations for the upcoming celebration, and replace some of the guild's recently chipped tableware. Rhodes, ever the pragmatist, once asked why they didn't just use wooden dishes all the time and have Lockie fix them when they broke. It would save money. But Lockie had only adjusted her glasses sharply and replied that she'd like to hang him up for that suggestion. Rhodes wisely dropped the topic. Porcelain plates and bowls were simply more pleasant to use, and besides, it wasn't like he was afraid of a few torture threats. Not really. Per tradition, the merchants would handle delivery of the larger, heavier items. Rhodes only carried lighter things like decorative ribbons and streamers, which made him look more like a man out on a casual date than someone on guild duty. After checking off the essentials, the rest of the trip fell into the category of abusing guild errands for personal errands. No. Let's call it an informal public outing. Or better yet, compensated shopping. The streets were bustling and traffic was chaotic due to the festival. The two couldn't find a proper shortcut back to the guild, so they ended up looping through back roads and side streets. By sheer coincidence, their route led them past Rhodes' apartment. Goodman was out front, minding the shop as usual. When he caught sight of them, his eyes widened slightly. Well now, if it isn't Rhodes. And Ms. Mara Jane? He said with a knowing smirk. He took one look at their coordinated winter outfits, then shot Rhodes an amused glance full of unspoken assumptions. You two. Out doing a bit of shopping? Mara Jane greeted him warmly. Good afternoon, Mr. Goodman. She had seen him a few times in the tavern and knew he was Rhodes' landlord. Rhodes gave a sheepish smile. Just running some errands for the guild. And it looks like you're opening late these days. Goodman shrugged. Weather's colder now. Not much business early in the morning anyway. Rhodes nodded. That's right. Oh, by the way, I've got a heater at home. Want me to lend it to you? Appreciate it, but I've already got one set up. No need to worry. Goodman replied with a chuckle. He motioned toward the items on his stall and gave Rhodes a conspiratorial wink. Got some new stock in today. Want to take a look? These would make perfect little gifts for a special lady. He was referring to a collection of hair accessories and bracelets, newly crafted by his wife. The designs were inspired by traditional weaving techniques Rhodes had shared with them previously, subtly infused into modern styles. They carried the charm of ancient craftsmanship without clashing with everyday outfits. Rhodes was easily swayed. A few of the hair ties caught his eye immediately, delicate and well made, and they felt just right for Myra. Noticing Myra browsing the stand with clear interest, Rhodes didn't hesitate. He picked up a few he liked. This red one matches the dress you wear sometimes. And this black one's thicker. It looks perfect for tying up a ponytail. Oh, and this one with the star charms. It's thinner, probably great for braiding. He rambled on without realizing it. Myra brushed her bangs aside, grabbed the black hair tie, and pulled her hair into a high ponytail. Like this? She checked herself in a hand mirror. Feels like an old hairstyle of mine. It looks good. That's what matters. Rhodes said, nodding in approval. Compared to her usual style, this one gave her a fresh charm. There was even a big bow on it. Adorably bold. Then Myra tried the red one. She swept her hair over one shoulder and tied it there, gently pushing her bangs to both sides. How about this look? That hairstyle was dangerous. You look very, very beautiful. Really elegant. Rhodes stammered, feeling his heart race. His mind was spinning, and for a split second, he seriously considered confessing right there and then. He had whispered the word elegant. But Myra still heard him. Her cheeks turned a faint pink. She quickly let her hair fall loose again, acting as if nothing happened, and finally picked up the decorated hair tie he'd suggested earlier. Braiding takes some time. Maybe I'll try it when there's a bit more leisure. Right. Totally. Rhodes nodded too quickly, then stepped in and bought all 3 hair ties before she could change her mind. Goodman made a tidy profit that morning, but Rhodes didn't feel like he'd lost a thing. Chapter 176, Fairy Tale, Cheers. The hair tie wasn't expensive, and Goodman even gave Rhodes a wink and a small discount. Rhodes felt quite pleased with the deal and thanked him earnestly after paying. Myra tucked away the New Year's gift, giving Rhodes a thoughtful look as she silently pondered what she could give in return. Ah, youth is such a wonderful thing, Goodman murmured as he watched the two of them walk away. It reminded him of the days when he and Molly had gone through something similar. They had tiptoed around their feelings, growing close in quiet, unspoken ways. No one ever said the words out loud, but the affection between them had been understood. Every day was filled with subtle hope and quiet happiness, mixed with just a hint of fear. Fear that what they had might slip away. If you asked him, that might have been the sweetest time of all. But that kid sure is lucky. Goodman added with a grin. Being favored by Miss Mara Jane, now that's something. Mara Jane might have had a temper in her younger days, but now she was a beloved beauty of the guild. Hard not to be a little jealous. Goodman glanced at the soft weavings and knitwork his wife had made and chuckled. Well, maybe not that jealous. On the way back, they passed an ice cream shop that was bustling with customers, even in the middle of winter. In fact, it looked even more popular than during the summer months. Children waved around their pocket money to buy colorful cones, laughing and running through the snow. Rhodes worried a few of them might drop their ice cream before getting a single bite. He stepped up and bought a matcha-flavored cone, then handed it to Myra. I told you I'd buy you ice cream last time. Just one? Myra took the cone and raised a brow. Aren't you getting one too? Not really in the mood for sweets today. Rhodes replied, quickly adding. Didn't bring much money with me. Oh? Then let me treat you to one. Myra said, already reaching for her wallet. No. Rhodes waved his hands, flustered. The line's too long anyway. We should probably head back. Myra tilted her head, watching him with suspicion. That was strange. Usually, he liked sharing snacks with her. She took a bite of the ice cream. The cold matcha flavor melted in her mouth, pleasantly refreshing. Then she noticed the way Rhodes was looking at her. You sure you don't want any? She asked, narrowing her eyes. Rhodes avoided her gaze. Well, I could go either way. You're so obvious. Myra gave him the silent treatment and focused on her dessert. As they walked back toward the guild, the cone steadily disappeared bite by bite. Rhodes, meanwhile, cast increasingly desperate glances at it. Hey. Is it good? He asked, not so subtly. Myra looked at him and smirked. Then she spoke as if reviewing fine cuisine. The cream quality is excellent, and the matcha is just right. Cool and smooth, with a lovely fragrance. That's not what I meant. Rhodes sighed, realizing she was teasing him. Myra grinned and added. Thanks for treating me to such delicious ice cream. You're welcome. Rhodes mumbled, watching her polish off the last bite without sparing even a taste for him. So much for that plan. Just before they stepped into the guild, Myra gave his calf a swift kick. You two are back already? Lockie asked with a smile. The merchant only dropped off the deliveries about half an hour ago. Myra glanced at Rhodes, then replied with a light smile. Sorry, we got a little delayed on the way. Yeah. Just a little delay, Lockie. Hee anyway, everything's been counted. The receipt's on the counter. Lockie said with a playful laugh. If this keeps up, I'm going to file for a raise. Myra chuckled. Thanks for all the hard work. I'll treat you to some cake next time. Deal. Lockie grinned and extended her hand toward Rhodes. Rhodes blinked. What's that for? Lockie leaned in and whispered. This is a golden opportunity to have Sister Myra treat me to cake. I'll sell it to you for 10,000 jewels. Come on, pay up. Rhodes smirked. If I had 10,000 J to spend, I'd just ask her out myself. Why would I need to buy an opportunity from you? Lockie glared at him. She really wanted to smack that smug couple aura right off him. December 31st, X783. Fairy Tale's New Year celebrations were in full swing. Since morning, the guild had been bustling with activity as everyone pitched in to decorate. Many of the supplies had been bought in advance by Rhodes and Myra, while others were handmade on site by the guild members. Gray contributed with his beautiful eyes sculptures, while Rita's created lively paintings to brighten the space. Happy zipped around overhead, flying decorations up to the rafters and rooftop corners under Myra's careful direction. Not to be outdone, Knots loudly declared that he wouldn't lose to Gray and promptly started a commotion inside the guild. Only to be swiftly beaten up by Master McGrav and tossed into the yard like a sack of potatoes. Once he landed outside, Knots quieted down. That's because Rosa was out there too, hammering rice cakes with Elfman. Elfman, as expected, roared about manliness with every strike, pounding the mochi with powerful blows. But Rosa, she was oddly enthusiastic. So much so that she had changed into a bunny girl costume just to hit rice cakes. She leapt and pounded with gusto, every swing of the mallet brimming with intensity. The contest between the two in the yard drew a crowd of onlookers, with cheers and applause ringing out one after another. It was hard to tell if people were cheering for the rice cakes or for something else entirely. Rhodes made sure not to look at anything he shouldn't, but somehow felt compelled to cheer for Elfman. Forget it, let's go help Myra, he said to himself. He was, after all, a man with a strong sense of self-preservation. Myra was standing on tiptoe, trying to hang a ribbon, but the spot was just a little out of her reach. Rhodes stepped in and easily helped her finish the job. That brief moment where their fingertips touched, unintentional and fleeting, was somehow more touching than any grand gesture. These moments had become part of their daily lives, each unique in its own way. Neither of them went out of their way to create opportunities, but they didn't avoid them either. Just a little higher, Myra said, guiding him. Sounds like the yard's getting pretty lively. Mirza and Elfman are having a rice cake showdown, Rhodes explained with a straight face. What I don't get is why all the people standing around, neither helping nor judging, are having the most fun. Making rice cakes is more fun when there's a crowd. Don't you think it's fun? Myra smiled playfully. I didn't really notice, Rhodes replied cautiously. He was smart enough not to blurt out the truth in response to a sudden question like that. Myra tilted her head in confusion. I meant the ribbon. I was asking if it looks good. What were you even talking about? Oh. Rhodes' brain quickly switched gears. He stepped back, examined the ribbon seriously for a moment, and nodded. I was too close before, that's why I didn't notice. But yeah, it looks great from here. You've got a good eye for this stuff. Really? Myra stepped back beside him, hands behind her back, deciding to let his slip-up go. From behind, Rita's quietly picked up her brush and started painting, capturing the moment of the two standing side by side, looking up at the decorations. That evening, the guild threw a New Year's party. Not everyone could make it, but the place was still bustling with life. The host, of course, was Max. He thrived in this kind of setting and tossed in a few clever jokes between announcements. Honestly, the guy could moonlight as a stand-up comedian. In addition to Myra performing a song on stage, several other members stepped up with impromptu acts. They weren't exactly professional performances, but that didn't matter. Among family, even the simplest of shows felt warm and fun. The party carried on all the way to midnight, until Max raised his hand and conjured a countdown using his sand magic. The glowing numbers shimmered in the air as everyone joined in, 10, 9, 8, 2, 1. And then, Master McGrav's booming voice rang out. Fairy tale, cheers. Fairy tale, cheers. Everyone echoed, raising their glasses high. To Rhodes' left stood Myra. To his right, Natsu. Then Mirza, Gray, Loke, Kana, Levi. An entire circle of friends wrapping around to Elfman on Myra's other side. Happy perched proudly atop Worm, who was enjoying the attention. For once, even Loke didn't disappear when Rhodes got close. The voices of this little family blended into the rest of the crowd. Fairy tale, cheers. Chapter 177, a Scarf Rhodes, who had once sworn never to get drunk again, woke up with a hangover. When he opened his eyes, sunlight was already spilling into the room. He was wrapped in a blanket, and someone had left a kettle and a cup of warm water beside him. Turning his head, he saw Za and Myra crouched near a sleeping Gray, busily drawing on his face with enthusiastic smiles. Several others nearby had already fallen victim to their artistic endeavors. Oh? You're up already, Rhodes? Very good. Mirza gave him an approving nod that left him slightly confused. Myra giggled behind her hand when she noticed him stirring. She walked over with gentle steps and poured him a cup of hot water. Thanks, Rhodes said, sipping slowly. The warmth helped clear his foggy head. Ah. So that's what Mirza meant. Apparently, she still believed that doodling on people's faces after a guild party was some sort of test to see if you could remain vigilant, even while passed out drunk. How naive can she be? Rhodes tried to communicate with Myra using a pointed glare, silently questioning her judgment. But Myra didn't respond. At least not with words. She simply kept staring at him, her lips twitching as she tried to suppress a laugh. Rhodes suddenly felt uneasy. I'm going to the bathroom. When he returned, his face was full of betrayal. His eyes locked onto Myra with righteous indignation. He had taken one look in the mirror and instantly recognized it. It was Myra's work, no doubt about it. While Rza's drawings were just as abstract, they belonged to a different school of thought. Myra's unique brand of chaos was unmistakable. Rhodes was certain, his face had been used as Myra's personal canvas. "What happened to the trust between us?" he asked, glaring. Myra brought her hands together in a mock apology and tilted her head with a mischievous glint in her eye. "I'm sorry," she said sweetly. "But Rza's idea was just too fun to resist, and you looked so cute while you were sleeping." "Cute?" Rhodes struggled to keep a straight face. "Actually," he said, adopting a serious tone. "There's a custom in my hometown. When a girl apologizes, she's supposed to braid her hair in a style she rarely uses, and it's even better if she wears the hair tie she got a few days ago." Myra raised a brow, clearly seeing through him. Without missing a beat, she pulled something from beneath the counter and said, feigning conflict. "But I was planning to use this moment to give you a gift. Now what should I do?" Rhodes blinked. "Thank you," he replied instantly. Hesitating would be a crime at this point. He reached out and accepted the gift without another word. It was a blue and white scarf. The yarn was soft and warm, and by the texture and slight unevenness in the pattern, he could tell it was handmade. He glanced at Myra for confirmation. "I'm not that skilled at knitting," she admitted shyly. "So there might be a few spots that didn't come out perfect?" Rhodes shook his head, already wrapping the scarf around his neck. "It's perfect? Every stitch is just right." He paused, his heart pounding a little faster as he opened his mouth again. "Actually," Myra responded immediately. "Don't tell me, in your hometown, girls are also supposed to tie the scarf themselves when they gift it? How could that be?" Rhodes denied it flatly, knowing full well he'd been caught. In a last-ditch effort, he added another excuse even more ridiculous than the first. "Actually, I've never worn a scarf before, so I don't know how to tie it." Myra gave him a long, skeptical look, her eyes locked onto his. Rhodes began to fidget under the scrutiny, eventually turning his gaze up to the ceiling in a desperate attempt to escape. Just when he thought he was about to crack, Myra let out a quiet laugh and said with a teasing smile, "Well, with your head raised that high, I can't exactly help you, can I?" Rhodes looked back down at her in surprise, heart skipping a beat. He blinked, made sure she was serious, then quickly sat down. Myra stepped closer, unwrapped the scarf gently, folded it in half, then looped the ends through the folded section and pulled it snug around his neck. "There," she said softly. "Like that." She stepped back a bit to get a better look, tilted her head in thought, then returned. "But with what you're wearing today, this style might be better." Rhodes sat quietly, letting her adjust the scarf as she pleased. But deep down, he had the overwhelming urge to pull her into a hug. He restrained himself. "Just a little longer. Wait for the right moment. Be patient. Try harder." "Okay," Myra finally said, examining her handiwork with satisfaction. "I don't mean to brag, but it really suits you." "Yeah." Rhodes reached up and ran his fingers along the scarf. "It's warm. Warm in every way. Well then, I should probably get to work. I'll help." "Go help Rza." Myra smiled and gave him a little shove on the back, pushing him away. "Come back later." "Oh." Rhodes blinked in confusion, not entirely sure what had just happened. Still, he followed her request without argument. "Is drawing faces on people more important than letting me help you?" he wondered, sighing internally. Back at the counter, Myra touched her cheek lightly, hiding the faint blush spreading across her face as she bent down to retrieve the account ledger. She needed to calm down too. It was so strange. Last time, when they went to the capital together, she helped him straighten his clothes and fix his tie. Yet she didn't feel anything at all. But this time, it felt completely different. Thanks to Rza's antics, the guild was thrown into chaos once again after everyone woke up. The root of the mischief was Rza, with Rhodes and Myra as accomplices. Not that it needed to be said. Either way, the graffiti spree had clearly been orchestrated by Rza. After the storm came the post-battle cleanup. And once again, Rza was promoted to acting contractor for the day. If Rhodes didn't already know how Rza operated, he might have suspected she stirred up the trouble just to get out of doing real work. Today was January 1st. The first day of the year X784. Some guild members wanted to squeeze in a few more days of rest, while others, a little short on funds, headed out to work right after lunch. Rhodes belonged to the former category. He was hoping to take it easy. But that afternoon, a postman arrived at the guild with a delivery, and since Rhodes happened to be near the door, he took it. Fairy tale. For Ms. Mara Jane Strauss. He walked it over and handed it to Myra. "Looks like a magazine," she said, not glancing up from the registry book. "Can you open it for me?" "Sure," Rhodes replied. who didn't like opening packages. Is Sorcerer Weekly normally this thick? Myra paused to think. Well, it's New Year's Day, and it's also Wednesday. So aside from the usual issue, there's probably a special supplement inside too. Rhodes opened the package and, just as she guessed, found 2 magazines inside. One regular weekly issue and one New Year's special edition. Huh, kind of weird they didn't bundle them together, he murmured, flipping through the pages. As he turned one over, a letter fell out. There's a note inside. Myra looked up and picked up the envelope. Probably something from the editor. Maybe they're asking if I'd write something for them. She hadn't done a photo shoot in a while. But after winning the prize money from the Harvest Festival beauty contest, the Strauss household wasn't exactly hurting for cash. Unfolding the letter, Myra skimmed it for a moment, then said calmly, Heart Cruise is partnering with Sorcerer Weekly. They want me to model their latest fashion line and appear on the cover of the next issue. Heart Cruise. That's a famous brand, right? Rhodes asked, recognizing the name. Why not advertise it in the New Year special? Probably still finalizing other contracts. Myra replied. The payment is pretty generous, though. It's Heart Cruise, after all. Are you thinking of doing it? Rhodes asked. Myra tapped her finger against her chin, then looked at him with a smile. I don't mind. What do you think? Me? Rhodes blinked, surprised she'd ask for his opinion. He hesitated for a second, then gave her a warm smile. It's a great opportunity to work with such a big brand. If you're interested, I say go for it. I'll support you. Chapter 178, The Newcomer. Tano. Myra smiled happily at his response. She tucked the letter away and said she'd think about the offer. As for the magazines, she left them on the front counter, remembering that Rhodes enjoyed keeping up with current events. After the New Year celebrations, the guild quickly returned to its usual rhythm, and Rhodes resumed his training routine as usual. 3 days later, a young boy with glasses arrived at the guild. He looked very youthful, with a round face, a neat flat-top haircut, and a large school bag strapped to his back. He had a polite and well-behaved appearance. After entering, he looked around the lively bar area, then made his way toward the front desk. Hello. Myra greeted warmly. Are you here to post a job request? No. The boy replied with a slight bow. My name is Tano. Tano Rabbits. I just turned 15, and I use light magic. He introduced himself clearly and confidently, then added. I'd like to join Fairy Tale, I see. Nice to meet you, Tano. I'm Rajane. Myra replied with a gentle smile. Please wait a moment. I'll call the master. Please, have a seat. Rhodes came over to help once Myra left. I'm Rhodes. I joined the guild half a year ago, so I'm still pretty new myself. Make yourself at home. I know who you are. You're the strongest of the newcomers, right? Tano said excitedly. I've been following all the news about Fairy Tale. Really? Haha, that reporter made me sound cooler than I am. Rhodes laughed modestly. Maybe you'll be the next strongest newcomer. Want something to drink? Tano sat obediently on a nearby stool and replied. Just water, thank you. Rhodes poured him a glass and handed it over just as Mikarav and Myra returned. The process for Tano joining the guild was as straightforward as it had been for Rhodes. Master Mikarav asked a few routine questions before stamping the Fairy Tale emblem on his hand. It was the first time Rhodes had seen someone join the guild from start to finish, and he found the experience strangely meaningful. Does this mean I've officially become a senior member now? He wondered aloud. Mikarav gave him a blank stare. A senior wizard? In truth, he had only moved up from second to last in completed missions to third from last. Myra chimed in with a playful smile. So, are you thinking about mentoring the new recruit, Rhodes? Rhodes found the idea intriguing and asked. Can I guide him? Just to be sure, Mikarav looked at him with a raised brow. And what exactly are you planning to teach him? Rhodes glanced at Myra and smiled. Just like when Myra helped me in the beginning. Walk him through the basics. How to accept a job, meet the client, and complete the request. Tano's eyes lit up. So joining the guild came with a personal mentor? And not just anyone, but the strongest of the recent newcomers? He seemed dependable. Rhodes paused to think and added. I can also share a few of my own lessons. Like. That's enough. I've made up my mind. Mikarav cut in decisively. Let Levi guide Tano instead. Eh? Rhodes blinked in surprise. You mentioned you like history, right? Mikarav said, turning back to Tano. Yes, I do. But. I thought Senior Rhodes. Mikarav waved a hand. Don't worry about him. He's not quite compatible with you. Rhodes looked visibly offended. Myra stifled a laugh behind her hand. The master probably just didn't want another rookie ending up lugging around unstable explosive lacrimal class time. He was being cautious. She gave Rhodes a light pat on the back to console him, then turned to Tano. "Come on. I'll introduce you to Levy." Makarov added. "Don't give me that look, Rhodes. I've got a job for you in a few days." "For me? What kind of mission could possibly be left for me?" Rhodes muttered, already suspecting it might involve the Magic Council again. Those people were always more complicated than they let on. "We don't have all the details yet," Makarov replied. "We're still waiting on confirmation. In the meantime, stay local. Don't take any jobs that send you too far out." "All right," Rhodes answered, though his uncertainty showed on his face. Makarov, ever used to dealing with his quirks, added reassuringly. "Relax. If it comes down to it, I'll make sure you're teamed up with someone reliable." That only made Rhodes more nervous. If the master was already planning teammates ahead of time, it probably meant this mission was a big one. With a sigh, Makarov walked off with his hands clasped behind his back, muttering something under his breath. He still had a self-review to write. That blockhead Natsu went out to chase down a bunch of petty thieves and ended up demolishing 7 houses. Before he even made it back, a formal summons from the Magic Council had already arrived. Headache. When Myra returned to the guild, she found Rhodes sitting at the bar, looking rather glum. "What's wrong?" she asked gently. "Did the master scold you?" "No, not exactly. But I've got a feeling he's about to dump something huge on me." Myra smiled reassuringly. "That's because he trusts you." "Sure, he trusts me. But not enough to let me mentor the newbies." "Well, that's..." Myra hesitated, not knowing how to respond. Personally, she thought Rhodes would be a great mentor. Anyway, forget that. Didn't Levy head out on a job? Why'd the master assign Tano to her? "Levy just got back today. You were probably in the training yard and missed her," Myra explained. "Actually, something unexpected happened during the mission. Jet ended up in the hospital, and Roy's with him." Rhodes frowned. "That's serious?" Myra looked a bit sympathetic. "Apparently, Jet tried to show off and fell right into a hunter's trap meant for wild beasts. Levy and Roy had to handle the job while protecting him the whole time." "That's rough," Rhodes muttered, unsure how to comment without being rude. It was like the classic saying, trying to save face but ending up flat on your rear. "Should I visit him at the hospital?" "Best not to. Levy said Jet doesn't want anyone seeing him like that." Myra chuckled. "But if you do go, you'd better bring Ritas with you." And there it was. Devilish Myra, unmasked. "Oh, by the way, did you think more about the magazine offer?" "I'm heading to Sorcerer's Branch the day after tomorrow," Myra replied. "The master hopes that by doing this, I can help restore Fairy Tale's image a bit." Rhodes immediately understood. The whole Natsu demolition incident must have gotten the master flustered. Myra was stepping up to help clean up the mess. Originally, Rhodes had planned to accompany her. But he didn't even make it to that day. The very next morning, Makarov called him in. With a rare, serious expression on his face. And standing beside him were Myra, looking concerned. And Ursa. The moment Rhodes saw her, a bad feeling settled in his gut. If this involved teaming up with Ursa, then whatever this mission was, it was no joke. "This mission is rather dangerous," Makarov said gravely. "If, after hearing the details, you feel it's too much, you're allowed to turn it down." Rhodes glanced at Ursa and guessed. "S-class?" Makarov shook his head. "Not quite rated as S-class officially, but for most people, it might as well be. It's incredibly dangerous and could turn life-threatening if mishandled." Ursa nodded solemnly. "If you're taking it this seriously, then it must be urgent. Please tell us the details." Rhodes nodded too. If it required this level of firepower, then it clearly wasn't something the guild could ignore. Makarov explained slowly. "A black magic cult known as Devil's Shadow has appeared near the kingdom's northern coast. They worship the dark mage Ziraf." Rhodes felt his expression tighten. "They've been abducting children from nearby villages and towns. Their goal is to use them as sacrifices to summon a demon from the books of Ziraf." Urza's eyes darkened. "Their magic is twisted, bone-shattering curses, blood rituals, and death spells. If their summoning ritual succeeds, this mission could instantly escalate past S-class. That's why I'm sending Urza. To prevent that outcome at all costs." Makarov then turned to Rhodes, his voice heavy with concern. "But she can't do this alone. She has to fight and protect the children. That's why I need someone reliable to back her up. And the one I trust most for the troll issue, Rhodes." Chapter 179, Teaming Up with Urza. In truth, the most suitable person to deal with an enemy like this would have been Myra. But due to her current circumstances, Master Makarov couldn't allow her to go. Miss Togan was assigned to another mission, and Lixus hadn't returned since the end of the S-class trials. That left only one candidate, Urza. As for Rhodes, His summoned creatures provided unique and versatile support that could prove invaluable in a mission like this. Plus, Makarov had been deeply impressed by the red and blue buffs he'd displayed before. He was confident Rhodes could hold his own, no matter how intense the battle became. During the recent trials, Rhodes also demonstrated excellent coordination and teamwork. Pairing him with Riza wouldn't hinder her; if anything, it might enhance her performance. Riza made her decision immediately. "Leave it to me. I won't let them succeed." Rhodes furrowed his brow. There were many myths surrounding Ziraf. Some claimed he was a black mage from 400 years ago and the origin of all dark magic. According to legend, he had created countless demons on his own before being defeated by powerful mages representing the forces of light. Some believed he was slain, others believed he had been sealed away. Of course, those tales were mainly found in magical folklore and books like Legends of the Magical World, not in historical records. Their truth remained unclear. Still, demons were very real. Only a few years ago, Del Yora had emerged in a country far to the east, though he fortunately been sealed by a powerful ice-make wizard. And Myra herself had once transformed into a demon. Her Satan soul was infamous among both allies and enemies alike. It was because demons truly existed that certain black magic cults still clung to the belief that Ziraf would one day be reborn to conquer the world. And whenever these cults made a move, the consequences were always dangerous. Rhodes voiced his confusion. What do they even gain by summoning demons? The demons in the books of Ziraf are nothing but killing machines, aren't they? Maybe they seek power. Maybe they want to rule. Or maybe they've been completely consumed by fanaticism. Makarov replied. We can't make sense of their madness. But what we can do is make sure they don't succeed. So, what's your decision? Rhodes hesitated. This mission sounds risky. He paused, then added. But if I'm going with Ursa, I think we can manage. Worst case, he could always hang back, release a few support summons, and boost Ursa's strength from afar. An S-class mage with red and blue buffs would be practically unstoppable. Myra looked like she wanted to say something but held back. Instead, she handed Rhodes the compiled mission intel, even though that would normally go to Ursa. Makarov nodded. If you're sure, start preparing now. The sooner you depart, the better. And remember, don't let your guard down. With Ursa's disciplined approach and Rhodes' cautious nature, Makarov felt confident they wouldn't be careless. Ursa extended a hand toward Rhodes. Let's work well together. Rhodes returned the handshake, though it felt a little awkward. Yeah. Please take care of me. It wasn't the handshake itself, it was just that they already knew each other well. Somehow, doing something so formal now just felt weird. Ursa returned to the dorm to pack her things, while Rhodes headed to the library to grab a few books for the road. The journey to the North Coast was a long one, more than enough time to study the mission details and get familiar with anything they might encounter. As Rhodes organized his gear and waited for Ursa, Myra hesitated for a moment, then quietly walked over to help straighten his coat. Rhodes chuckled softly, but Myra leaned in and whispered, Be careful out there. This mission's dangerous, so don't try to be a hero. If you have to, rely on Ursa more. Don't let your pride get in the way. She's incredibly strong, and she's not the type to mock someone for needing help. And the more Myra spoke, the more it warmed Rhodes' heart. But it also made him a little nervous. In a movie, when someone says things like this before a mission, it usually doesn't end well. When she finished, Rhodes mustered up his courage and gently placed his hand on her head. I remember everything, he said with a smile. Myra froze in place, ignoring his hand, and murmured with a hint of regret, I'm sorry. If I still had the strength I once did. I'm just as worried about you as you are about me. Rhodes replied. And honestly, if you were still as strong as before, you'd probably have beaten me up a dozen times by now. Myra finally smiled again. That's true. If you tried something like this back then, I'd have broken both your arms. Can you not say something that terrifying while smiling like that? Rhodes retracted his hand, but couldn't help thinking how soft her hair felt. Then maybe just one arm. Myra teased with a grin. Rhodes pointed at her, mock accusingly. You're a devil. Hands on her hips, Myra smirked. Guilty as charged. Traveling with Ursa was one of the safest things imaginable. The only issue? She packed way too much. In addition to renting a passenger carriage for the two of them, they had to hire another one just to haul all of Ursa's luggage. But true to her reputation, Ursa didn't need anyone's help. She loaded the entire cart herself with ease. They both settled into the front carriage, flipping through the mission documents Myra had compiled with great care. Unlike Natsu, Elfman, or Alzik, Ursa wasn't the type to charge into a mission without preparation. She always read through all the information thoroughly and took time to analyze every detail. In that way, she was similar to Gray, but far more proactive. She not only underlined the parts she thought were critical, but also made it a point to discuss them with Rhodes along the way. Thanks to her experience and methodical nature, the trip had been smooth and surprisingly relaxing for Rhodes. Finally, he didn't have to think through every little thing by himself. Just like when they first met, Mirza left a strong impression, reliable, sharp, and always one step ahead. "We'll be passing near Manjazaka and Poppy Town," Mirza explained, tracing the route on the map she laid across her lap. "It'll take us over a day to reach the suspected location." She paused, then added, "I suggest we travel further tonight. If we don't make it to town before sundown, we can set up camp somewhere safe. The earlier we arrive, the better our chances of catching them off guard." Rhodes nodded. "I'm fine with that, but what about the drivers?" "I'll speak with them," Mirza said simply. Rhodes tilted his head, slightly concerned. With Mirza, the words "I'll speak with them" might mean anything from negotiation to threatening them with a broadsword. He made a mental note to supervise that conversation later. Rhodes reached into his satchel and pulled out a well-worn book. "Here. This one has some topographical details on the north coast and outlines a few surrounding villages. It's a bit outdated, but it might give us an edge." Mirza accepted the book with a rare smile. "Just like Biska said, you're always so thoughtful." Rhodes shook his head modestly. "It's just that I'm not as strong or experienced as you. So I do what I can to improve our chances, even if it's just something small." "Don't sell yourself short," Mirza said, her voice firm but kind. "Master Mikarov's spoken highly of you more than once." Rhodes smiled at that. It was true that the praise had been earned, though he felt a bit lucky to have received it so early. Still, he couldn't help but wonder how this mission would turn out. Chapter 180, both reliable and unreliable. That night, just as Mirza predicted, they didn't reach a town and had to camp in the wilderness. In storytelling terms, this was what they'd call missing the inn on the way. The kind of situation that usually leads to unexpected events. The two coachmen, understandably, were reluctant. They voiced their concerns about sleeping out in the open, especially with the risk of wild beasts lurking nearby. And with the cold weather, it wasn't exactly appealing. However, after Mirza made a sincere and surprisingly non-threatening request, they finally agreed. Rhodes was relieved she hadn't resorted to unsheathing her sword. She had genuinely asked for help. That said, her version of sincerity still carried an overwhelming pressure that left the coachman trembling. To make sure it didn't count as unintentional intimidation, Rhodes quickly stepped in to promise their safety, and even offered to pay them extra. With that, everyone was happy. Mirza pulled out an iron pot from her absurdly large pile of luggage and began setting up a camp stove. Meanwhile, Rhodes pitched their tent. Thankfully, the tent-building skills he picked up from Gray came in handy. When everything was finally set up and the fire was crackling, Rhodes looked forward to tasting Mirza's cooking again. That's when she broke the news. "I didn't bring any ingredients," she said plainly. Rhodes froze. "Wait, what? You brought kitchenware, spices, even this pot? But no food?" Mirza looked a little sheepish. "Well, space was limited, so I had to make some sacrifices." Rhodes glanced at the second wagon packed to the brim with her luggage. "Limited space?" he repeated blankly. "What on earth is in all of that?" As if reading his mind, Mirza offered an explanation. "Mostly mission souvenirs, a few important gifts, and some general-use tools like tents. Oh, and the armor you gave me last time is in there too. I really liked it, so I wanted to keep it close. Want me to put it on and show you?" If it had been any other girl, Rhodes might have mistaken that for flirting. But this was Mirza. Like Kenna, she treated her close friends like family, like siblings. She probably just genuinely appreciated the gift and thought it polite to offer. Rhodes politely declined. "I'm glad you like it, but let's stay focused. The real problem is what we're going to eat tonight." He'd already eaten his rations at noon, food that Myra had rushed to prepare for him before his departure, and he'd shared half of it with Mirza. Now, there was nothing left for dinner, and his stomach was not pleased. "I'm sorry. I should have been more mindful," Mirza said, clenching her fists and bowing slightly. "You can punish me however you see fit after the mission. I'll even give up part of the reward." Rhodes sighed, one hand covering his face. Why does she get so intense about the weirdest things? Forget it. Summon, Merc Wolf. In a shimmer of light, 6 wolves emerged, their 16 glowing green eyes reflecting the firelight and sending shivers down the coachman's spines. "Go on. Find us something edible, rabbits, pheasants, anything you can hunt." Rhodes recalled seeing hare tracks in the snow earlier that day when using his scouting spell through scuttle crabs. Finding prey in the dead of winter wasn't easy, but merc wolves were surprisingly efficient. Not long after Rhodes summoned them, they returned with a small animal in their jaws that looked like a young deer. "Isn't that too small to eat?" "Oh. Wait, it's a roe deer. Rhodes let out a relieved breath. Judging by its size, it was fully grown after all. Then came Riz's moment to shine. Several gleaming knives flew from her cart like a precision strike team. In one swift display of airborne mastery, she bled, skinned, deboned, and butchered the deer. It was fast, clean, and honestly a little terrifying. She moved on to boiling soup and skewering meat for roasting. After the two of them had eaten their fill, they generously shared the rest with the coachman. While the drivers had packed dry rations for the journey, warm meat under a starry sky was an offer no one could refuse. Requip. A flash of light burst around her as she swapped into lavender-colored pajamas. Rhodes blinked. Changing into pajamas? Out here? In winter? Then again, he reminded himself, she was Versa. Magicians, especially S-class ones, didn't follow the logic of normal people. She even had a cozy sleeping bag ready. Rhodes's eyes landed on the pattern printed on her pajamas. Hey, isn't that the symbol of heart cryos? Oh? Yes. Versa nodded, brushing her hair back. The clothing quality is excellent. Most of my armor is from heart cryos too. Wait, really? Rhodes tilted his head. I thought they were a fashion brand. They make armor? They didn't originally. Versa replied with a matter-of-fact tone. But after I had a little chat with them, they changed their minds. Rhodes narrowed his eyes. Dare I ask? How exactly did you ask them? Can you help me make armor? Versa repeated her request, this time with a sudden surge of overwhelming pressure in her voice and posture, making it feel like the temperature dropped by 10 degrees. She then casually returned to normal. Like that. Haha. Of course. Very persuasive. Rhodes muttered, managing a dry chuckle. What reasonable business partners. All right. Versa said, stretching. Since we're in the wilderness, let's sort out night watch shifts. No need. Rhodes raised a hand. Worm can stand guard. With a small flash of light, Worm appeared, his sleepy eyes blinking under the firelight. He waddled up beside them, patted his belly, and looked determined. He wasn't a fighter, not by a long shot, but he was alert and quiet. Plus, the magic required to maintain his summon was so small, it barely made a dent in Rhodes's mana reserves. Woo? Worm looked up curiously. Versa glanced at the chubby little creature and asked. Can your magic handle having him active all night? No problem. I can keep Worm summoned for a full 24 hours. Rhodes said confidently. He stepped into his tent, gently stopping Worm with one hand as the little creature tried to follow him inside. You're on night watch, buddy. I'll treat you to some poro snacks when we get back. Woo. Worm gave a soft sound and sat down proudly at the tent entrance like a snow lion. Only rounder and fluffier. Versa crouched beside him, gently patting his head. We're counting on you. Wake me up if anything happens. Woo. Worm nodded seriously. Though honestly, it was always a bit hard to tell where his head ended and his neck began. That night passed in peaceful silence. The next morning, everyone stirred as the first light of dawn broke over the snow-dusted plains. They used clean, warmed water conjured by Rhodes's text magic to wash up and refresh themselves. Text magic is really handy, Versa said, emerging from her tent. With a shimmer of light, she swapped out of her pajamas and back into her usual armor in a flash of magical brilliance. Re-equip magic looks way more convenient, Rhodes said, adjusting his scarf. Can you teach me sometime? Of course. It's not a difficult spell to learn, Versa replied enthusiastically. As she rolled up the tent, she explained the basics of re-equip magic. If one wasn't planning to use it in combat, the magic was relatively simple, just a spatial storage technique for clothing. However, if you wanted to reach Riz's level, summoning and switching armors mid-battle with precision and speed, it took exceptional talent and relentless practice. Rhodes didn't need to aim that high. He just wanted something practical for travel, less about weaponized wardrobe and more about avoiding awkward moments in the field. Once they were packed, the caravan resumed its journey. Rhodes sat beside Versa again, flipping through the mission notes Myra had compiled. Versa looked over and raised an eyebrow. Not practicing the spell now? Oh, I'll wait until we get back. Better to save my magic in case something happens on the road. Rhodes replied smoothly. In truth, he was worried that a failed attempt would land him in a Grateful Buster situation, half naked and humiliated. Better to experiment back at home, far from curious eyes. Chapter 181, lives in the northern reaches of the Kingdom of Fiori. The weather was even colder than Magnolia. The snow out in the wild hadn't melted yet, and faint tracks of hares and mice crisscrossed the white landscape. Occasionally, you could spot patches of tall, dried grass poking through the snow, the little circles around them melting slightly faster than the rest. There were no sanitation workers here to sprinkle snowmelt or clear the streets. The snow on the main roads had simply been trampled down by people, livestock, and wagons until it became packed and icy hard. Anyone feeling a little childish could try sliding across it, though they'd better watch out for unexpected bumps unless they wanted to faceplant into the snow. On one such road, two large crabs marched in single file, their sturdy claws crunching over the hard snow and leaving little dents behind them. Their traction seemed surprisingly good. The crab in front was carrying two people on its back, while the one behind was pulling a flatbed cart. Specifically, the cart packed with Riz's luggage. It had been tied upside down on top of their carriage during the ride here, but now that they were heading into dangerous territory, Riza and Rhodes had sent the two drivers back to town. From here on, the crabs had to handle the rest. By noon, the sun was shining brightly, the kind that made your eyes ache after traveling through it for too long. Casually, Riza pulled out two pairs of sunglasses, the kind she usually wore to match different swimsuits and beach outfits, and handed one to Rhodes. It wasn't the time to be picky about style. He accepted it gratefully and made a mental note to prepare a proper pair for future snowy travels. Snow blindness was no joke. To avoid attracting too much attention, Rhodes dismissed the scuttle crabs before entering town. He and Riza walked the last stretch on foot. Although, frankly, Riza dragging a luggage cart loaded high with armor was already pretty conspicuous. "Excuse me." Rhodes stopped a passerby. "Is there a good hotel around here?" The passerby gave them a curious once-over before replying. "There's only one hotel in Morningroy town. Just keep following this road. You can't miss it." "Thanks." They split up briefly after that. Riza headed off to book a room and stash her mountain of luggage, while Rhodes went straight to the town's tavern. The tavern was, well, not exactly what he was used to. The place was a little grimy, the tables sticky with who knew what, but it wasn't as loud as the fairy tale guild hall, at least. Rhodes eyed the place, shrugged, and sat down at the counter. "One beer." The bartender filled the mug quickly and slid it across. 500 jewels. Rhodes nearly choked. 500 jewels. For one lousy beer? He could drink 3 at the guild for that much. And that was just going by the listed price. If he thought about the profit margin here, this place was downright shameless. Still, he pulled out the money, handed it over, and took a sip. "Yep, definitely not better than the guilds." "You're not from around here, are you?" The bartender leaned over, clearly the chatty type. "What gave it away?" "Call it a feeling," the man said with a grin. "Actually, it's not that hard. Morningroy's a small place. If you were local, I'd recognize you. You've got sharp eyes, then." Rhodes chuckled. "I'm from the south. Any good sightseeing spots around here?" "There's snow everywhere this time of year. If you ask me, it all looks the same," the bartender said indifferently, with the same enthusiasm as someone half-heartedly recommending a crumbling tourist spot. "If you really want something nice, you should head farther north in the summer. The beaches are great, and there are places where the mountains meet the sea. Pretty interesting stuff." A customer sitting nearby overheard and shouted, "Hey, Bob, quit leading people on. No one should be heading north right now." The bartender, apparently named Bob, snorted back. "I didn't tell him to go right now." Rhodes picked up on that instantly. "What do you mean it's not safe to go north?" Bob leaned in a little. "Lately, there's been a lot of trouble up that way. Towns like Manjazaka and Poppy have had kids go missing. Real bad stuff. Some folks even got killed trying to stop it." "Someone died?" Rhodes tensed. "That wasn't mentioned in the intelligence reports. I heard it happened just yesterday. Poor guy's kid got snatched, and he fought back. Lost his life for it." Bob shook his head with a grim look. Rhodes frowned deeply. "What about the town guards or the army? What are they doing?" Bob let out a scoff. "What can they do? They say it's human traffickers, snatching kids and either hiding out in the mountains or slipping away by sea. Once they sell them off to places like the Seven Kingdoms or Bosco, there's no getting them back. By the time anyone catches up, the trail's cold." His voice grew sharper, thick with resentment. "It's those monsters' fault. Now no one dares let their kids walk around town alone. It's disgusting." Rhodes agreed, clenching his fists. From the sound of it, the townsfolk thought they were dealing with ordinary traffickers. Nobody suspected anything worse lurking beneath the surface. Rhodes sat there a while longer, nursing his beer and picking up stray bits of conversation. Once he had heard enough, he got up and left. After he was gone, one of the tavern patrons nudged Bob and muttered, "Hey, Bob, weren't you worried you might have just spilled all that to a trafficker?" Bob shrugged lazily. "Do you think he looked like one? Bad guys don't exactly walk around with villain written on their faces, you know. Who knows? Maybe he's a wizard here to investigate, and the criminals will be caught the moment he shows up." "Ha ha ha. Yeah, right. Like some hotshot wizard would waste their time in a shabby little tavern like yours." Meanwhile, Rhodes met up with Urza, who had also gathered some information from the innkeeper. "We can't afford to waste any more time. Those people could do anything," Mirza said firmly, her expression grim. Rhodes nodded. "Yeah. Let's head out now and start investigating Manjazaka and Poppy Town. Let's split up, it'll be faster," Mirza suggested, though she hesitated for a moment. The master had specifically asked her to look out for Rhodes before they left. Rhodes thought about it. If they delayed any longer, more people could get hurt. He nodded. "All right. I'll be careful. I'll have Worm follow you. If I find anything, I'll summon him back. If you find something, just send him back to me." "Got it. Be careful," Mirza replied decisively, taking Worm along with her. As they prepared to separate, Rhodes quickly added, "And don't get reckless. If you spot enemies, stick to plan A. If it doesn't work out, switch to plan B." He couldn't shake the feeling that ever since they arrived, Mirza had been more tense than usual. She wasn't as calm as she had been on the journey here. Pushing the thought aside for now, Rhodes stopped by a clothing store and picked up some cheap clothes, scarves, hats, and the like, and changed into them to blend in better before heading out toward Poppy Town. When traveling alone, it was important to stay a low profile and avoid drawing attention. Rhodes also sent out a scuttle crab to scout ahead and watch their back trail. He planned to stay cautious the whole way, especially after reaching Poppy Town. Poppy Town was where someone had been killed just yesterday. Mirza believed that since such a huge incident had already happened there, the black magic cult likely wouldn't risk coming back again so soon. Which meant that the more dangerous place today was probably Manjazaka Town, so Mirza had gone there instead. Still, Rhodes couldn't shake his concern about Morningroy Town, so before leaving, he left a raptor behind to watch the area. The summoning cost was minor, and it gave him some peace of mind as he set off. Chapter 182, for Lord Carnivor's scuttle crabs, which are fast runners, have a wide field of vision and can share their sight with Rhodes, making them the best choice for scouts. The downside is that they're a bit large, and their green color makes them hard to hide during winter. Rhodes made a mental note to get a few pieces of camouflage cloth for the scuttle crabs in the future, maybe snow camouflage, desert camouflage, ocean camouflage, so he could adapt them to different environments. For now, he'd just have to make do. The road to Poppy Town was eerily quiet. Over more than 10 kilometers, he only encountered 3 people, all riding together in a single carriage. They seemed to be merchants headed to Morningroy to deliver goods. The moment they spotted Rhodes, a lone stranger, they grew wary and even tried to steer their carriage off the main road to avoid him. Rhodes casually asked them for directions, carefully checking for any suspicious magic. Sensing none, he took the initiative to move aside and give them space. The streets of Poppy Town weren't empty, security patrols were visible, and there were even 2 guards stationed at the entrance checking everyone who came and went. It seemed they weren't entirely useless, just not very effective. Rhodes was stopped and questioned at the gate. To avoid unnecessary trouble, he showed a fabricated commission and warned them not to stir up a fuss. Still distrustful, Rhodes discreetly left a scuttle crab to watch them from a distance before heading into town. The atmosphere inside was tense. There were few pedestrians, and most walked in groups of 2 or 3, clutching sticks or tools for protection. Aside from a few shops, almost every house was shuttered tightly. The whole town radiated unease and fear. Rhodes avoided the patrols, dismissed his merc wolves, and blended into the shadows of the alleyways, quietly surveying the area. He found yesterday's crime scene and sent a wolf to pick up the lingering scent. Passing by a house that had clearly lost a child, he slipped inside and quietly took a piece of clothing. It was rude, but desperate times called for desperate measures. Just as he was about to leave the town and let the merc wolves start a broader search, Rhodes suddenly felt Worm return to the howling abyss. Something had happened. Rhodes immediately summoned his raptor and took off, flying full speed toward Manjazaka Town, attacking in broad daylight. Was this black magic cult really that arrogant? When he arrived, the battle was already over. 3 black-robed figures lay sprawled in the street, 2 broken staffs lying nearby. The cobblestone road had a massive crack, as if it had been smashed by a heavy blow. Mirza stood tall, her boot pressed against one cultist's chest, her sword pointed at another's throat. Behind her, a mother clutched her child tightly, fear written all over her face as she stared at the fallen enemies. The townspeople, sensing the danger had passed, trickled out of their homes, gathering to watch. Some quickly ran to summon the town's security team. Rhodes circled overhead a few times, keeping an eye out for suspicious movement. Mirza barely glanced up, then returned to her interrogation. "You can save your breath." The man under her foot screamed. "Even if I die, my body and soul will be dedicated to Lord Carnivore." Rhodes landed just in time to hear this lunatic shouting. Carnivore, a demon who devoured humans, not just their flesh but their souls as well. Legend said Carniber particularly loved consuming the bodies and souls of children, which explained why cults trying to summon him kidnapped children for their rituals. Mirza's blade scraped against the cultist's neck, drawing a thin line of blood before stabbing into the ground beside him. "I'll ask you one more time," Mirza said coldly. "Where are the children?" The cultist only laughed harder, the blood on his neck trickling down. "Ha ha ha ha. They will become nourishment for Lord Carniber. By tomorrow, you'll all be dead." The two other black-robed men also cried out fanatically, "For Lord Carniber! Glory to Zeraf!" Even though they were too injured to stand, they still shouted with wild, unwavering devotion. What kind of power did Zeraf hold to make people worship him with such blind fervor? Or was it simply the allure of strength itself? Rhodes couldn't understand it, at least, not yet. He made a mental note to study more about Zeraf once he returned home. Suddenly, a disheveled woman burst through the crowd, her face stricken with exhaustion and panic. "My child. Where is my child?" Before she could throw herself at the black-robed man, her husband rushed up behind her and restrained her tightly. Despite the fury and desperation burning in his eyes, he knew better. Even defeated, these cultists were still dangerous. One after another, more parents gathered, their voices trembling with hope and heartbreak. "Master Wizards, please. Please save our children." Mirza stood tall, her voice firm and unwavering. "We will find their lair and bring your children back safely." The black-robed man at her feet sneered, his voice full of venom. "It's useless. After tonight, none of you." Before he could finish, Rhodes calmly stomped on his face, knocking out half his teeth and silencing him with a sickening crunch. Wearing his usual mild smile, Rhodes addressed the crowd politely, "Please, go home and rest. We'll need a little time and space to question them properly, all right?" The parents, still hesitant and worried, slowly backed away. A few had to be pulled away by the security team, who had finally arrived and were doing their best to calm the scene. Mirza didn't seem bothered by Rhodes' interrogation technique at all. If anything, she looked ready to get even rougher. Kindness, after all, was something fairy tale reserved for those who truly deserved it. The three cultists were stubborn to the end, spouting fanatical nonsense between screams. Still, during the negotiations, Rhodes managed to extract a few crucial pieces of information. Their leader went by the code name Ghost, a black mage rumored to wield magic strong enough to shatter a person's bones with a single blow. From what they gathered, the location of the cult's ceremony was extremely well hidden and heavily guarded. Although the cultists refused to reveal the exact location, Mirza, sharp-eyed as ever, deduced from the mud and bits of grass stuck to their shoes that it was likely somewhere near the northern coastline, where the mountains met the sea. What's more, the summoning ritual was probably scheduled for tonight. Until then, the children who were to be used as sacrifices would likely remain alive. Time was running out. Without wasting a moment, Mirza and Rhodes handed over the three incapacitated cultists, now too weak even to chant slogans, to the local security team for safekeeping. Then they immediately rushed north. Rhodes couldn't help but feel tense. He had told himself he would act calmly and keep a low profile, but so much for that plan. After causing such a scene, any hopes of staying under the radar had pretty much gone up in smoke. If the cult had already gotten wind of what happened, things could get messy very quickly. Mirza, running alongside him, looked remorseful. "I'm sorry. I lost control. I acted on impulse." Rhodes shook his head. "It's hard not to react in a situation like that," he said honestly. He didn't think Mirza had done anything wrong, though even by her standards, her reaction had been especially fierce. "Either way," he continued, "we need to find them as soon as possible, before the ceremony starts." Mirza's eyes flashed with determination. "Even if we have to chase the devil into hell itself, we will bring those children back." Chapter 183, Beasts. Where the mountains met the sea along the northern coast of the Kingdom of Fiori, the landscape should have been a beautiful tourist attraction. However, in the dead of winter, with biting winds and heavy snow, almost no one came here for months on end. Traveling southeast from the best sightseeing spots, one would find themselves entering a vast, rugged mountain range. And tucked away in a remote valley near the mountain's entrance, a simple, run-down residence had been built. Inside the outer hall of the house, 4 figures in black robes gathered around a small stove, warming their hands while a kettle let off steady wisps of steam. "I swear, Raven and the others are taking forever," one muttered. "It's just snatching some brats. How hard can it be?" Another grumbled, clearly annoyed. "Better slow than stupid," a third retorted. "You're the one who killed someone in broad daylight. If the council catches a whiff of us, we're finished. TCH, those fools haven't found us in 10 years. After tonight," the fourth said smugly, letting the sentence hang. They casually chatted, their words dripping with anticipation for what was about to happen. Tonight was the culmination of everything they had worked toward. They had spent a full year locating the place where Carniber slumbered, and months more uncovering the ritual needed to summon him. Setting up the altar, gathering the sacrifices, it had all led to this moment. At last, their dream was about to come true. When Carniber awakened, neither the Magic Council nor any power in Fiore would be able to stop them. The world would belong to them. From the room deeper inside came the muffled sounds of children sobbing and whimpering, but none of the black-robed cultists paid it any mind. They were used to it by now. As long as the children were still breathing, it didn't matter. In that dark, stinking room, more than a dozen children huddled miserably against the cold stone walls. Some cried softly, their fear too overwhelming to suppress, but they didn't dare cry loudly. Loud crying earned brutal beatings. Others had been trapped there so long they no longer cried at all. They sat in a daze, staring blankly into nothing, or simply fell into uneasy sleep, trapped in a nightmare even while unconscious. The cultists didn't care for them beyond keeping them alive, and the rank stench of filth filled the suffocating space. Among all the children, there were two who stood out, two who neither cried nor looked vacant. A little girl whimpered, her voice trembling, "Big brother. I'm cold. Come closer." The gray-haired boy whispered, drawing her into his arms. "You'll be warmer if we stay close." She nodded, snuggling closer. Moments later, she whispered again, "Big brother. I'm hungry." He hugged her tighter, his voice gentle, "Just sleep. If you sleep, the hunger will go away." The little girl obediently closed her eyes. But a short while later, she opened them again. "Big brother, why hasn't Liz come back yet?" "She's gone home." The boy murmured. "She passed the test. She's already moved on to the next level. Don't worry, maybe when we wake up, we'll get to go too." "Okay." The little boy was lying. He had been lying to his sister for a whole day and night, telling her that this was just a test arranged by their parents and the uncles outside. As long as they passed it, he said, they would both grow into strong, powerful adults, and when they got home, there would be a cake as big as a wagon wheel waiting for them. He told her the other children crying after being whipped were just scared of the acting by the uncles. It was all part of the test. But deep down, he knew. This place was dangerous. And Liz was never coming back. The boy silently studied the dim, foul-smelling room. There were no windows, and the walls were thick and solid. If there was any chance to escape, it would be when the bad men outside fell asleep. But last night, another shift had stood guard the entire time. They hadn't slept at all. Their only chance was to be taken out, just like Liz had been. He could only hope that when the time came, he and his sister would be taken out together. Creak. The wooden door swung open, the noise stirring several of the sleeping children. Some blinked awake with tears in their eyes but quickly wiped them away. They knew better than to cry. A man holding a whip stepped inside. Snap. Without warning, he lashed the whip down, striking a child who hadn't fully woken up. "Get up." The man barked. "Ah. Wah." The child cried out in pain but was immediately struck twice more, the brutal sting burning across his arms and back. The boy bit back further cries, sobbing quietly. The black-robed man swept a cold gaze across the children to make sure no one else was dawdling. "Move." He barked again. Terrified of the whip, the children scrambled to their feet, shuffling and stumbling. The gray-haired boy held his little sister's hand tightly, pulling her close as they blended into the line. Was this it? Was this the chance we'd been waiting for? But when they were herded into the outer hall, the boy's heart sank. At least 20 black-robed cultists stood outside, each one watching with cold, eager eyes. It was more than enough to keep an eye on each child. Escape was almost impossible. The cultists forced the children out of the building and onto the snow-covered path leading toward the altar. Some of the kids, lucky enough to have thicker coats, managed to hold up against the freezing cold. But others, dressed only in thin clothing, were already shivering uncontrollably, their lips turning purple as they trudged through the biting wind. The black-robed cultists didn't seem concerned, as long as the children didn't freeze to death on the short walk. The cultist originally assigned to watch over the place frowned. "It's not even dark yet. Why are you moving ahead of schedule? Raven hasn't returned, and he didn't send the signal like we agreed. He might have been killed. If we delay any longer, something could go wrong. That idiot. But if we start the ceremony early, what if we don't have enough sacrifices? And the time isn't right yet. The ghost will handle it. At worst, Lord Carniber will just be a little weaker when he's summoned. We can always offer a few more higher quality sacrifices afterward." "I see. Hey. You two brats. Get over here. This place is a nightmare to find." Rhodes muttered under his breath, frustrated. He had used several pieces of clothing he'd collected from Poppy Town, letting the merc wolves track the scent. He even tried taking over the search himself, guiding the wolves directly. But no matter how hard they tried, the wolves couldn't catch the children's scent. Maybe too much time had passed. Or maybe the black magic cult had done something to mask it. In the end, they found the altar not by scent, but by the faint metallic tang of blood carried on the cold wind. Hidden on a slope not far from the altar, Rhodes and Urza crouched low, using two krugs disguised as rocks for cover. On the sunny side of the mountain, the snow was patchy, so no one noticed the sudden appearance of two stones. From their hiding spot, they could see the valley below. There, a rough platform built from stones and timber rose from the ground, and a dark red magic circle was etched across it. With just a glance, Urza could tell it had been drawn in blood. As for whose blood? Her hands tightened into fists. She wanted to charge down there and cut those monsters down immediately. Rhodes placed a hand firmly on her shoulder. It's no use killing them yet. We need to find where they're keeping the children first. I know. Urza whispered, her voice strained. Any signs yet? If not, I'll. If Rhodes didn't find anything soon, Urza was fully prepared to storm the camp and interrogate every last cultist by force. In this terrain, scuttle crabs were too conspicuous, and the scouting had been slow. But just then, Rhodes's eyes sharpened. Got it. Someone's approaching. They'll be here in a few minutes, and the kids. He gritted his teeth. They're with them. His stomach twisted with anger. Just what had these animals done to the children? Chapter 184, She's alone. Rhodes counted. There were 14 children in total. 12 had been forced here on foot, while 2 were carried, both looking like they'd just been beaten. I can sneak the children away underground, Rhodes said. But to be safe, we should distract them first. Urza nodded. Leave that to me. One thing Fairy Tale was definitely good at was causing a scene. All right. Wait for my signal. Rhodes summoned Worm again and handed it to Urza as the signal carrier. Summon, Krugs. Split up. Rhodes called forth another group of Krugs, immediately splitting them into smaller ones, 12 mini Krugs in total, and sent them sinking underground. Take over, Krug. Rhodes himself shifted into the form of a Krug, flashed Urza thumbs up, and burrowed into the ground. Urza crouched low, holding on to Worm, and found another hiding spot. Down at the altar, the leader of the black magic cult, Ghost, was interrogating his men. What happened to those 2 brats? They tried to escape on the way here. One of the black-robed figures said. We might have hit them too hard bringing them back. Ghost narrowed his eyes. It wasn't about hitting them too hard, it was about some of his men taking the chance to vent their anger. Still, at least they hadn't killed the children. He sniffed the air, then frowned. Clean them up. Offering dirty sacrifices would be a disgrace to Lord Carniver. Yes, sir. There was no time to heat water, so the black-robed man grabbed buckets of freezing water and roughly began washing the children. The gray-haired boy was covered in bruises, but he still hugged his sister tightly and whispered. It's okay. Just hold on a little longer. It'll all be over soon. The little girl, shivering from the cold, sobbed quietly. Deep down, she knew now, her brother was a liar. At that moment, Worm, acting as the signal, vanished. It meant Rhodes was ready. Urza immediately stood up and shouted boldly from the mountainside. There you are, evil cultists. Dozens of black-robed cultists turned in shock. Who's there? Requip, giant armor. In a flash of light, Urza donned a heavy golden suit of armor, a massive spear gleaming in her hands. Without wasting another second, she hurled the spear with a roar, spear of purification. The cultists shouted in alarm. She dares attack us alone? Ghost's face twisted. Her target is the altar. Stop her. But intercepting Urza's furious throw was easier said than done. 5 cultists near the altar leapt up, trying to intercept the spear. 2 of them completely misjudged its speed and collided into each other midair. The other 3 managed to raise their weapons to block, but the force dragged them down too. The spear was like a falling meteor. No, it was a meteor, except this one came crashing straight down on their heads. Boom. The altar that dozens of cultists had painstakingly built, the centerpiece of all their planning and dark rituals, was blown to pieces by Urza's single throw. The black-robed men stood frozen, staring blankly at the ruins of their altar. Was that seriously just a javelin and not a magic cannon? Bastard! Ghost's face twisted with fury as he watched the woman on the mountainside destroy days of hard work and years of dreams in a single instant. He gripped his staff so tightly that veins bulged on the back of his hand. Kill her. He roared. Offer her as a sacrifice to Lord Carniver. Boss. The brats are gone. Someone shouted in panic. What? Shadow whipped around. The children who had been waiting for their so-called cleansing had vanished. That woman. She has an accomplice. At the foot of the mountain, Urza was already striding forward with powerful, unstoppable steps. Behind her, 12 mini Krugs emerged one after another, each carrying a child carefully in its pincer-like mandibles. Rhodes appeared too, holding a gray-haired brother and sister securely in his arms. He had planned to retreat further, but the children did not know how to control their breathing underground. Keeping them hidden for too long risked suffocation, so he had no choice but to bring them up early. Ah! Wah! The children gasped for breath, bursting into cries of fear and confusion. Rhodes quickly dispelled his transformation magic and tried to calm them. It's all right. Don't be scared. We're wizards from fairy tale. We're here to rescue you. We'll take you home soon, I promise. But before the children could fully understand, a furious shout rang out. Go home? You're not going anywhere. Ghost barked an order, and instantly, every black-robed cultist with a staff unleashed a volley of magic blasts aimed straight at Urza, Rhodes, and the children. The magic blasts were different from the usual spells like impact or explosion used by the council's troops. Each one carried a dark curse, the sinister glow unmistakable. Rhodes instinctively reached for the pendant around his neck, but Urza stopped him. Take the children and go. Leave the rest to me. Got it. Rhodes didn't waste time like some overly dramatic actor in a bad play. The moment Urza gave the order, he turned and ran. The mini Grugs sprang into action, gently lifting the children onto their backs before scampering away on their short legs. Equip, heavy armor set. Urza swapped into a sturdier armor, crossing her arms in front of her as the thick plates on her gauntlets locked together into a heavy shield. At the same time, a massive green defensive magic circle materialized in midair. More than 30 cursed spells slammed into the barrier, exploding into a mess of ugly black fireworks. Urza's long crimson hair whipped in the wind, and her solid, unshakable back filled the battlefield with a sense of overwhelming reliability. Keep firing. She's only one person. A black-robed cultist shouted. Magic blasts of all colors rained down again. The green shield flickered under the pressure. Meanwhile, another cultist, skilled in close combat, charged forward, wielding various weapons. Urza glanced back briefly. Rhodes, the master of quick retreats, had already replaced the mini Grugs carrying the children for a raptor, its wings flapping hard as it half flew, half ran at a rapid pace toward the mountains. They had almost reached the safe side of the hill. At the same time, 12 mini Grugs had burrowed into the ground again, 6 merc wolves were sprinting downhill to join the battle, and 2 grumps were moving wide to flank the enemies. To deal with these kinds of scum, Rhodes had zero qualms about using poison. Urza smiled. Turns out her partner was very reliable after all. When she turned back to block another wave of attacks, her face hardened. Her expression sharpened, serious and deadly. Equip, Heaven's Wheel armor. A flash of light, and Urza appeared floating in the air, twin swords in hand. Steel wings spread from her back, gleaming under the winter sun. 16 swords of the Heaven's Wheel armor shot out like meteors, aiming directly at the cultists rushing toward her. These black-robed wizards weren't weaklings. The swords only managed to knock down 6 or 7 of them. However, Urza's unmistakable appearance and iconic magic immediately revealed who they were facing. The armor-changing magic, the crimson hair, and that armor. She's the Fairy Queen, Urza Scarlet. And that guy earlier. He's a fairy tale wizard too. The #1 guild in Fiore. Ghost gripped his staff tighter, his face darkening. Things had just gotten a whole lot worse. Chapter 185, With our flesh and souls, we offer. So what if she's the Fairy Queen? She's still just one woman. We've got 50 people. Charge. Heavenly Wheel, Circle Sword. 16 swords appeared behind Urza again, whirling rapidly around her. A gleaming halo of sword light formed, spinning in a full circle slash that swept outward without leaving a single blind spot. Whether they were black-robed cultists charging from the front or sneaking from the sides, all were blown away with screams. Heavenly Wheel, 3 blades of the sky. Urza slashed her 2 swords forward, sending a sharp triangular wave of energy slicing through the air. The few who managed to get close collapsed as blood burst from their chests. This is the Fairy Queen. Don't just stand there, attack her now. The black-robed cultists in the back quickly raised their staffs. But before they could fire, more than a dozen of them suddenly felt sharp pains in their legs, half of their bodies sank into the ground. What the hell is this? Be careful. There's an earth mage underground. Wolves. There's a wolf pack. Why are wolves attacking us? Get lost, you beasts. Several cultists tried to target the merc wolves, but were instantly sprayed with purple venom. They clutched their faces, howling in pain. What's happening? Poison. It's poison. Damn it. Ghost's face twisted in fury as he saw Urza carving her way through the cultists, and another group of wild beasts tearing apart his forces. Dissolve flesh, shatter bones, the will of black magic, Bonka Urish. An ominous black light shot from Ghost's staff, flying straight at Urza, but a merc wolf jumped into the attack's path. Whoa! The merc wolf gave a pitiful cry as its flesh and bones rapidly melted, collapsing to the ground like a deflated husk. The first order Road had given to the beasts was clear: protect Urza. Get out of my way, Bonker. What? Too many Krugs suddenly sprang up and bit Ghost legs, causing his spell to go off target and hit his own men. Urza struck down 2 more cultists beside her. At the same time, 3 glowing blue magic patterns formed around her. From the mountaintop, a small giant, a towering blue sentinel, rumbled down with heavy steps. So this is the crest of insight Road mentioned? Urza immediately felt her magic power being replenished at a rapid pace. In that case, I'll end this right now. Knives, swords, spears, axes, nearly 100 different weapons appeared in the air behind her, densely packed like a storm about to burst. Combined with Urza's fierce expression, it looked like a one-woman army was about to descend upon them. Even Road's merc wolves flinched at the sight, wondering if they should retreat. Each weapon adjusted its aim according to Urza's will, locking onto the cultists still standing. At least 3 weapons targeted each person. The black-robed cultists stared in terror, jaws hanging open, their weapons slipping from their hands. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The weapons rained down like a violent storm. Even if someone managed to dodge the first weapon, the second and third were right behind. Urza's precision was terrifying. Despite controlling nearly 100 weapons at once, each strike hit exactly where she wanted. The ground shook under the impact, with weapons smashing cultists into the dirt or sending them flying. Meanwhile, the merc wolves and Krugs darting between the cultists weren't harmed at all. As for Ghost, being the leader, he received special treatment. 6 swords from the heavenly wheel pierced through his arms and legs, pinning him to the ground. 2 more swords crossed right next to his throat. Rhodes had specifically called the blue sentinel to help, and it rumbled over to Urza's side, only to find that the battle was already over. The towering golem raised its thick arms and scratched its head, looking confused, as if unsure what to do next. Urza glanced at it and smiled. She found the big guy kind of cute. "Is this your magic?" she asked. "It helped a lot." Ha ha, ha ha ha. Ghost suddenly burst into crazed laughter, his expression twisted with madness. "You can't stop it. You can't stop Lord Carniber from coming. With our flesh and blood, our souls, we dedicate." Bang. A sandbag-sized fist slammed into Ghost, smashing him straight into the ground. Cracks spiderwebbed across the earth around him. The heavenly wheel swords that had been pinned into his body were knocked loose from the impact, but Urza swiftly recalled them before they clattered away. Naturally, it was the blue sentinel that threw the punch. Rhodes had given strict orders beforehand. If anyone lying on the ground started behaving weirdly or chanting suspiciously, punch first, ask questions never. However, just as Ghost fell silent, another black-robed man suddenly croaked out, "With our flesh and blood, our souls." Boom. The golem didn't hesitate, smashing him straight into the dirt as well. "With our..." Boom. The blue sentinel barreled back and forth across the battlefield, flattening every fanatic who tried to mutter anything strange, pounding them into the frozen ground. Finally, the valley fell into peaceful, blissful silence. The blue sentinel, having completed its mission, quietly disappeared. Rhodes arrived, riding on a scuttle crab, and immediately directed the Krugs to kick each unconscious cultist lightly in the head, just to be sure they stayed down. "How are you?" he asked Urza. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," Urza answered, reverting back to her usual outfit. "What about the children?" "They're safe, hiding behind the mountain," Rhodes said. "I left Worm and the raptors to keep them warm. But we need to hurry. The kids have been cold and hungry for days. If we take too long, they might get sick. Those scumbags." Urza cursed through gritted teeth. The 2 of them quickly dealt with the aftermath. They tied up Ghost, the leader, extra securely. The rest of the cultists had their hands and feet bound tightly, and their mouths gagged. After dragging them a good distance away from the altar, they left them in the snow for the Magic Council's recovery team to deal with. As for their injuries, there was no time to care. If they died from the cold or their wounds, well, too bad. On the way back, the raptors naturally carried the children. They spread their large wings wide to shield the kids from the cold and wind, helping to keep them warm. Rhodes and Urza had to make a harder journey back, hauling Ghost along on a scuttle crab. "Is your magic power going to hold up?" Urza asked, remembering how much magic it took to summon that giant golem earlier. "Not bad," Rhodes replied. "I used the crest of insight on myself too. I should have enough to last until we reach the town." Compared to the S-class exam last month, Rhodes had made some small but noticeable progress. The clearest sign was that after summoning the blue sentinel, he didn't immediately send it back. Instead, he could now keep it fighting alongside him for a decent amount of time. If he really pushed himself, He might even be able to summon the bramble back too and have it rampage across the battlefield. His earlier idea of giving Riza both red and blue buffs wasn't just a crazy dream anymore, it was starting to look like a last resort tactic he could actually pull off. It wouldn't be long before these two practical jungle monsters became reliable parts of his regular combat force. And once that happened, he could finally start preparing for the next target. Logically, the next summon should be the Rift Herald, but the vague figure Rhodes had seen lurking through the mist looked a lot like a giant insect. That alone was enough to make him hesitate for now. Chapter 186, Mission accomplished. Rhodes sent the children straight to the hospital in Manjazaka town. Meanwhile, Mirza carried the captured ghost to contact the local council branch. The doctors quickly prepared warm food for the children, treated their external injuries, and bandaged them up carefully. Out of the 14 children, 8 showed symptoms of fever. 2 of them, the brother and sister who had tried to escape but were caught, had particularly high fevers. The other 4 were not seriously ill, but still needed care. After a flurry of treatment, it was already dark outside. Even so, the children's parents rushed over as soon as they heard the news. Parents from Poppy Town, even those who had lost their children, came carrying oil lamps, trudging through the snow to the hospital. When the first group of parents arrived, Rhodes quietly slipped away and crouched alone in a dark corner outside the building. He was feeling afraid. On the way back, he had learned from the children that a girl named Liz had been taken away by the black-robed cultists and never returned. Thinking of the blood-drawn magic circle at the altar filled him with dread. Rhodes could not bring himself to face Liz's parents. He knew it was not truly his fault, but he did not want to see that look. He had seen enough grief to last a lifetime. "Why are you squatting here?" Liz appeared, finished with her tasks. She had changed into a thick purple down jacket, hands tucked into the pockets, matching the wintry night. Only, she was still wearing boots with bare legs, which looked a little strange. "How did it go with the council?" Rhodes asked. "They've imprisoned Ghost and the 3 others we caught earlier. The council is dispatching a team to sweep the mountains overnight," Mirza replied. "And what about us being a little heavy-handed this time?" Rhodes asked cautiously. "It's fine. The black magic cult's crimes were too severe. The council cannot condone what they did to the children. They will not hold us accountable for using excessive force. At most, they will send someone later to ask a few questions." "That's a relief." Rhodes tilted his head back and looked at the dark night sky. "At least Master Makarov will not get scolded because of us." Mirza squatted down next to him, leaning against a wall and hugging her knees. "The sky's no good tonight. Not a single star in sight," she said, her breath forming a soft white cloud in the cold air. "Yeah." Rhodes replied quietly. "Are you thinking about Liz?" Mirza asked gently. "Or maybe the person who died yesterday?" "Both," Rhodes admitted. "I keep wondering if we could have saved them if we had arrived sooner. But there is no what if. We did not even know what was happening back then. I understand that, but I still cannot help feeling regret." Mirza rested her chin on her knees, her voice calm but steady. "That is called kindness. Feeling sadness for lives lost and regret for the misfortune of others." She turned slightly to look at him. "Remember this feeling. Carry it with you. Let it drive you to move forward, stronger and more determined. So next time, you can stop it before it happens. That is one of the reasons we work so hard to become stronger." Compared to Rhodes, who had grown up relatively sheltered, Mirza had seen and lived through far harsher realities. Because of that, she carried the same sadness and regrets, but could still find the strength to comfort Rhodes with a steady heart. Mirza suddenly realized that when Master Makarov told her to take good care of Rhodes, he might not have meant just during battle, but outside of it as well. "Would you like to come over and lean on me?" Mirza opened her arms warmly, not minding offering a hug to comfort him. "Thanks for the thought, but I'll pass," Rhodes said, shaking his head. He wasn't thick-skinned enough for that. Standing up, he patted his cheek lightly and said, "Let's go. There are people here who have it much worse than us. We should check on them." Rhodes and Mirza did not end up meeting Liz's parents, but they did meet the mayors of Manjazaka and Poppy Town. "Thank you for everything you've done," the mayor of Manjazaka said solemnly. "On behalf of all the rescued children, their parents, and every resident of these towns, we extend our deepest gratitude. There's no need to be so formal. We were simply completing the mission to eliminate the criminal group and rescue the children," Mirza replied in her usual serious tone. "However, regarding the child named Liz and the resident from Poppy Town who was tragically killed, we are sorry we arrived too late," she added sincerely. "We also deeply regret what happened to that resident," the mayor of Poppy Town said. "But none of this was your fault. As for Liz..." He paused thoughtfully before continuing. "Liz has already returned home." Rhodes and Mirza blinked in surprise. "What did you say? Liz has returned home?" They asked almost at the same time. Yes. The mayor confirmed. She managed to escape and returned by herself yesterday. She's the only one who made it back on her own. We visited her family to check on her. We tried asking where she had been held, but the poor girl was so traumatized she couldn't speak clearly. Rhodes narrowed his eyes. You're not joking, right? I swear in my name as mayor. The man said earnestly. Seeing the mayor's firm attitude and noticing Liz's family members weren't among the ones waiting at the hospital, Rhodes and Rosa finally relaxed. It's good that she's safe. Really, it's wonderful that she's safe. They stayed at the hospital a while longer, watching as the healthier children were joyfully reunited with their parents. Even the two children who had been running high fevers showed signs of recovery. When it was time to leave, they were sent off with endless thanks from the grateful parents and cheerful farewells from the children. Thank you, big brother. Thank you, big sister. As for the resident of Poppy Town who died, the mayor said it was due to negligence by the local security team, and compensation would be given to the family, along with help finding a means of livelihood. With that, Rhodes and Rosa's mission came to an official end. The reward would be sent to the guild after the council finished their paperwork, and they might be asked a few follow-up questions about the mission details later. The two politely declined the mayor's invitations to stay longer and returned to the hotel Rosa had booked earlier in Morning Glory Town. Rhodes picked up his suitcase and asked, "Where's the key to my room?" "The key? Here." Rosa said casually, tossing a key over to him. Rhodes caught it but frowned. "Wait a minute. Isn't this the key you just used to open this room?" Rosa looked genuinely confused. "Isn't this the key you wanted? I mean, my room's key." Rhodes stared at her, a sinking feeling creeping in. "Don't tell me. You only booked one room?" "It's our room. There are 2 beds anyway," Rosa said reasonably. "When we're on a mission and traveling together, sharing a room is normal. I haven't done it often, but..." She suddenly brightened as if thinking of something fun. "Want to push the beds together? It'll be like camping. If anything happens, we can take care of each other quickly." "No thanks. I'm good." Rhodes quickly refused. It sounded logical the way she said it, but emotionally, he wasn't ready to deal with that. "It's late. Let's just get some sleep," he said hurriedly. Rosa looked a little disappointed. To her, squeezing together with companions was just like those warm, chaotic nights after a guild party when everyone collapsed together on the floor. "Okay," she said cheerfully. As Rhodes headed toward the bathroom, Rosa called out, "Hey, do you want me to help scrub your back?" Rhodes almost tripped over his own feet. He slammed the bathroom door shut and locked it with a click. "No thanks," he shouted from inside. Rosa shrugged casually. She really didn't think much of it. Meanwhile, Rhodes stood under the shower, staring blankly at the showerhead, questioning his entire existence. Am I overthinking it? Am I the weird one here? Chapter 187, Home is where the guild is. The hotel room was warm and the bed was comfortable, but Rhodes's sleep quality was only average. He didn't fall asleep until the second half of the night and even woke up once. By the time they set out the next morning, he was still yawning. "Didn't you sleep well?" Rosa asked. "Did I snore?" Rhodes waved his hand. "No, maybe I was just tired and had a nightmare." He had dreamed that he agreed to share a bed with Rosa and even scrubbed each other's backs while bathing. Then, Rosa suddenly turned into Myra, slapped him flying straight onto the black magic cult's altar, where black-robed people began chanting spells to summon a demon. Just as the demon was about to eat him, Myra fell from the sky, slapped the demon into demon paste, grabbed Rhodes by the collar, and declared it was the price for flirting with other women. Then the black-robed men turned into the children Rhodes had saved, jumping and clapping while chanting, "Big sister, beat him up." Rhodes woke up furious. Dreams are the opposite of reality, he thought. How could Myra be so cruel? He comforted himself with that thought and dozed off again in the carriage after Rosa rented one. The carriage stopped after a while, waking Rhodes with the smell of delicious food. Rosa was no longer inside. When he got out, he found she had already cooked a pot of rice, soup, and stew, and was warmly inviting the 2 drivers to eat with her. Naturally, Rhodes wasn't shy and quickly jumped down to eat. "Where did you get the rice and all these ingredients?" he asked. "I bought them when I rented the carriage," Rosa said seriously, pointing to her pile of suitcases. "I've reflected on it. From now on, I must always bring enough food when traveling so something like before doesn't happen again." Rhodes didn't know how to respond. This should be considered a good thing, right? At least it was better to be prepared. On the way back, they weren't rushing like before. They followed a route recommended by the 2 drivers, finding a hotel in every town they passed before nightfall. Because of that, the journey back took nearly 2 days. Finally, as the sun set on the 8th, they returned to the guild. Rosa pushed open the guild doors with a smile, and a plate of warm noodles promptly smacked her in the face. Rhodes was stunned. Who was crazy enough to pull that off? He didn't have time to think about it. He rushed to the counter, grabbed Myra's arm, and pulled her aside. "I'm back." Bang. Crash. A stool flew through the air, knocking down several bottles of wine. Amid the commotion, Myra smiled sweetly. "Welcome back." It had only been a few days since he last saw her, but Rhodes felt like she had become even more beautiful. He wanted to keep looking at her, but it was also nice just being around and having fun. There was no need to interrogate who threw the noodles because the culprit confessed immediately. I. Rhodes understood instantly. It was an idiom for someone confessing everything at once. "Natsu." Mirza's furious shout made the whole guild fall silent in an instant. The smarter guild members quickly scurried back to their seats like good little students. Only Natsu stood frozen in place, like a rusty machine that hadn't been oiled in years. Mirza's face grew terrifying. "Natsu." Mirza walked over step by step, punched Natsu squarely on the chin, and knocked him out cold. "Don't waste food so casually." Natsu cried out as he crashed through the second-floor wall and was sent flying straight into the lake behind the guild. Tano, who had only joined the guild a few days ago, whispered. "Wait. The problem is wasting food?" Myra smiled and gently reminded. "Mirza, try not to destroy the guild." Tano still felt something was off. "Isn't Miss Mara Jane acting a little strange too?" Levy chuckled awkwardly and said. "You'll get used to it. This is normal around here." "Not so happy," called out, flying after Natsu through the newly made hole. "I'm sorry, I couldn't control my strength," Mirza said seriously to Myra, before turning and starting to restore order to the guild. Rhodes happily sat with Myra, watching the troublemakers get scolded, and even placed a little bet with her on whether it would take 2 or 3 days before someone caused chaos again. Once Mirza finished her official business, she headed to the back to clean up. After freshening up, she returned to discuss the mission details with Myra. Meanwhile, Rhodes was flipping through a sample magazine Myra had given him. Since it was early January, the clothing brand was mostly promoting their new winter collection. On the cover, Myra wore a cozy gray shearling coat layered over a white knitted vest, paired with an A-line skirt and stylish marten boots. She was glancing back over her shoulder with a soft smile that made anyone's heart skip a beat. Mirza's eyes lit up. "Oh? That vest looks nice." "Really?" "Mirza, I think it would look even better as a short, midriff-bearing version," Myra said with a mischievous smile, tossing out the idea without a care. Rhodes thought about it for a second. Wasn't that the kind of outfit Myra used to wear when she was younger? Was she trying to stir up trouble again? The two girls continued chatting about clothes, with Myra subtly trying to persuade Mirza to try something a little more daring. Rhodes watched them and thought it was a hopeless effort. After all, Mirza practically lived in armor. He even started wondering if Mirza was secretly wearing armor under her down jacket that day. After a while, Mirza finally remembered the real reason they were there. "Where's the master?" Myra replied. "He went home. Apparently, Lixus is coming back soon, and the master wants to have a proper talk with him." Lixus. Mirza also found Lixus's personality difficult to handle and could only hope that the master would gradually talk some sense into him. "The master already knows about your mission. The council branch sent word that you both did an excellent job," Myra said with a smile. "But the reward will take a few days to arrive." Rhodes suddenly asked. "How much is the mission reward?" 2.7 million jewels. Two. Are you sure you didn't accidentally add an extra zero?" Myra chuckled. "Nope. Didn't the master mention the reward amount before you left?" "Maybe he did," Rhodes said, scratching his head. "But I was too focused on the black magic cult kidnapping children. I probably didn't pay attention." Having never seen such a large sum before, Rhodes asked nervously. "Is this the normal pay for S-class missions?" Mirza shook her head. "No. The minimum reward for an S-class mission is usually over 5 million jewels. While 2.7 million is rare for a regular mission, it's not unheard of, and it's still far below S-class standards. Even so, it was no small amount." Rhodes quickly did the math. 2.7 million jewels, split evenly between 2 people, would leave him with 1.35 million. He could finally pay off his debt to the master all at once. Rhodes had never felt this rich. Even after paying off his debt, he would still have enough left to cover over a year's worth of rent. Thinking about it that way, though, the happiness instantly dropped. Paying rent month after month felt just like working to feed his landlord. "Maybe I should think about buying a house of my own?" Rhodes thought to himself. Now that he had proven he could stand on his own in this world, maybe it was time to settle down properly. Magnolia was a nice city. It would be great to have a home here. Preferably somewhere close to the guild, so commuting would be easy. But not too close, otherwise, He might risk his house getting wrecked whenever the guild members started brawling. He sneaked a glance at Myra, who was chatting happily nearby, and made up his mind. He definitely needed to start saving to buy a house. It would come in handy sooner or later. Chapter 188, Training, Teasing, and Tender Moments. Natsu and Happy eventually made their way back to the guild. Actually, by this time of year, the lake behind the guild had already begun to freeze over. When Natsu crashed into it, the thin layer of ice gave way and he plunged straight into the freezing water. When he returned to the guild, he was completely soaked. Out of sympathy, Rhodes asked, "Do you want to take a hot shower and change into dry clothes?" "Huh?" Natsu blinked in confusion, then flames suddenly burst from his body like a Super Saiyan. In just a few seconds, his clothes and hair were completely dry. Dragon Slayer magic really was convenient, no fear of heat in the summer or cold in the winter. Rhodes waved his hand helplessly. "Forget I said anything. Natsu's the worst." Happy grumbled. "You were already in the water and you didn't even help us catch any fish." Rhodes was speechless. He thought Happy had chased after Natsu because he was worried about him, but apparently, he just wanted fresh fish. "I didn't go into the water on purpose. It was Riz's fault." Natsu muttered angrily, but guilt crept up on him quickly. Even if it wasn't intentional, he had still started it. Then he looked at Rhodes with newfound respect. "You actually teamed up with Riza?" Myra, having finished her work, asked curiously. "Oh, right. How did it feel to team up with Riza?" Rhodes suddenly remembered the scene from his nightmare where Myra slapped him into the black magic cult's altar. Looking at the sweet smile on Myra's face now, he couldn't help but shudder. By the way, wasn't Natsu's real-life experience just now eerily similar to that dream? If Riza could do it, Myra probably could too. No. He shook off the thought. That was impossible. Right? Rhodes collected himself and answered. "Overall, she's a very reliable partner, especially when it comes to fighting." Natsu nodded vigorously. "If Riza was fighting on your side, she was definitely someone you could count on." Rhodes recalled the battle vividly. "Both her offense and defense are overwhelming. It feels like the fight ends before I even get the chance to do anything." "Huh? That sounds awful." Natsu gasped. To him, not being able to fight at all was basically torture. Before Rhodes could figure out what was so awful about it, Natsu had already declared firmly, "I'm never teaming up with Riza." Myra giggled and asked, "But if Riza invites you, would you refuse?" Of course. Natsu stammered, but the fear in his eyes gave him away. There was no way he would dare say no. Watching this, Rhodes learned an important life lesson. If Myra could calm Natsu down in one sentence, she was definitely someone to be cautious of. After Natsu and Happy left, Myra leaned in a little and asked with a smile, "Besides fighting, don't you think Riza's personality is actually really cute?" "Not bad." Rhodes thought for a moment, then smiled warmly. "But if I had to pick, teaming up with Miss Mara Jane was still the most fun experience I've ever had." "Is that so?" Myra said with a soft smile. "Then, would you like to team up with me again in the future?" "Of course. It would be perfect if we teamed up for training after work today, went shopping as a team tomorrow, and had dinner together the day after that." Rhodes suddenly paused, blinking. "Wait a second. If you think about it, haven't we already been working together every day at the guild?" Myra giggled. "I don't think that's exactly how the word team is supposed to be used. Maybe you should look up what team means in a dictionary." Myra covered her mouth and laughed, clearly enjoying herself. Rhodes couldn't help but sigh internally. She must have picked up some bad habits from hanging around him too much. Now she even teased him the same way he used to joke. Later that day, after finishing their tasks, Rhodes threw himself into training with a passion. It definitely wasn't because Myra was there watching him. It was just that he could genuinely feel the benefits of his magic power growing. If he had enough magic reserves, maybe one day he could be like Ursa, casually waving his hand to send hundreds of weapons flying at once. He could even play at having his own king's treasury or unlimited blade works using his requip magic. And those high-reward, high-risk missions were seriously tempting. If he kept taking little missions worth just tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of jewels, who knew how many years it would take to buy a house and truly settle down in Magnolia? But with missions worth millions, he could afford a nice house in just a few months. Or he could just marry into the Strauss family. Myra already had a house, savings, and was basically a wealthy lady. "What are you thinking about?" Myra suddenly asked, noticing his distracted expression. "Just thinking about my next training goals." Myra tilted her head. "Is it because you got a better sense of Riza's strength? Feeling more pressure now?" She teased gently. "You seem a lot more motivated today than usual." "Maybe." Rhodes smiled a little. "Or maybe it's because I saw some ugly things recently." He thought back to the villager who had been killed. I suddenly realized this world isn't as safe and simple as I thought. If I want to protect myself and everyone important to me, I need to become stronger. At first, Rhodes had treated everything cautiously. He used to think the outside world was dangerous, that it was easy to get trampled by wild beasts if you left the safety of town. That made him reluctant to venture out. Later, after learning magic and becoming much stronger, Rhodes started occasionally going out on quests. The cheerful atmosphere of the guild and the peaceful, prosperous life in Magnolia gradually made him feel that the outside world wasn't so dangerous after all. Wasn't this world supposed to have a happy ending? Life here seemed far more peaceful compared to the worlds of pirates and ninjas he once knew. However, after this mission involving the Black Magic cult, the previous Bandit suppression mission, and even the earlier Dark Guild arrest, Rhodes slowly realized something. The reason Magnolia could enjoy such peace and stability was because of fairy tales' presence. Those remote villages and small towns without the protection of wizard guilds weren't so lucky. Hidden in the shadows were many dangerous people. Those willing to harm others or even sacrifice human lives just to summon demons. Rhodes wasn't the type to dream about changing the whole world. That was something for main characters to worry about. He just wanted to grow stronger, strong enough to protect the people he cared about. Right now, there were about 100 people Rhodes wished to protect, and he knew these same people had always been protecting him too. The next morning, Rhodes arrived at the guild on time. Myra, who was polishing a cup behind the counter, noticed he seemed a little down. "What's wrong?" she asked, looking up. Rhodes answered with a troubled face. "My son is dying." Crack. The wooden beer mug Myra was scrubbing split in half under her hands. She calmly set the cup down. "Son?" "Yeah," Rhodes said, sighing heavily. "I have 3 potted plants on my balcony. I usually take care of them like my own sons. I even talk to them sometimes." He continued miserably. "But I couldn't look after them these past few days. When I got home last night, they were all wilted." Myra let out a soft breath, relieved. It turned out he was talking about plants. Rhodes actually had such a strange hobby. Well, taking care of plants wasn't strange at all. It was just the way he talked about them, calling them his sons, that sounded a little odd. Still, there really were people who treated their flowers and plants like family. It wasn't that weird. Right? After thinking for a moment, Myra suggested kindly. "Should we ask Droy for help?" "Good idea. He loves working with plants." Rhodes brightened up instantly. "I'll go and find him right now." With that, he bolted out of the guild. Myra wrinkled her nose and pulled out the attendance sheet. "Humphrey, causing such a scare over a few sick plants, I'll mark him as absent." But after a few seconds, she crossed out the record with a small smile. After all, Rhodes had only stepped out for a little while. It wasn't really absenteeism. Plus, he did tell her before leaving. Well, she would let him off this time. Chapter 189, Master Plans. The Shadowgear team happened to be hanging around the guild. Jet had just been discharged from the hospital 2 days ago. Since his leg was still injured, he would need some time to recover before he could take on jobs again. As for the embarrassing incident that landed him in the hospital, Jet didn't seem to care anymore. Everyone made a fool of themselves once in a while. What mattered was getting back up and trying harder next time. When Rhodes returned with the flower pots, he found the 3 of them eating and drinking together. Although technically, drinking wasn't the best idea for someone who hadn't fully healed yet, wizards weren't exactly known for their restraint. Besides, Levi and Roy hadn't been able to persuade Jet to take it easy. At worst, it would just delay his recovery by a few more days. So they let him be. "Droy, could you take a look at these plants for me?" Rhodes asked, setting the pots down on the table. 2 were orchids, and the other was a succulent. "Potted plants? They don't look too good." Droy put down his wine glass and leaned in to inspect them carefully. Levi asked curiously. "Rhodes, do you like growing flowers?" "It's not exactly a hobby," Rhodes explained. "These were left behind by my old landlord. He said I could have them. I've been taking care of them for about half a year, but I had to leave them while I was out on a job recently. When I got back, they were like this." Droy examined the leaves one by one, poked the soil, and looked surprisingly professional about it. These 2 orchids might have been frostbitten. They definitely need a change of soil. "And this one here?" Droy pointed to the succulent, frowning. "Looks like something's been eating away at the roots." "Hang on a second." Droy dug into his pocket, pulled out 2 seeds the size of grains of rice, and tossed them into the pots. The seeds sprouted instantly, but instead of growing upward, the tiny green vines burrowed into the soil. A few seconds later, Droy said. "Found them." 2 thin seedlings poked their heads out of the soil, each dangling a fat, white grub from the top. Levi recoiled with a look of disgust. Droy quickly snapped his fingers, and the two seedlings grew pitcher-like mouths, snapping up the worms and retracting back into the soil, digesting the pests on the spot. "Whoa, what a handy bit of magic!" Rhodes exclaimed. "You could make a fortune if you opened a flower shop." Droy chuckled. "That's about the only thing I'm good at." He smiled warmly and offered, "How about I take care of these 3 pots for a few days? I'll give them back once they've recovered." Rhodes asked curiously, "Can't you just use your magic to fix them up instantly?" Droy shook his head. "The seeds I usually use are specially cultivated. For ordinary plants like these, if you force them to grow too fast, they'll just die by tomorrow." "I see. Thanks a lot for the help." "You're welcome. I love taking care of plants anyway. Plus, I still owe you for those seeds you brought me last time." Droy shot a glance at Jet. "And thanks to a certain someone, our team's been pretty idle lately." "Hey. I already apologized, okay?" Jet grumbled, though there wasn't much he could do about it. He owed Rhodes a favor this time. Rhodes thought for a moment. Blue buff might actually help Jet heal faster. He offered, "Want some help? I might be able to speed up your recovery a bit. Think of it as a thank you gift to Droy." "Spare me," Jet said quickly, shaking his head. "I don't want to owe you even more favors. It's just a few more days anyway. Suit yourself," Rhodes said, shrugging. Then he remembered something. "By the way, Levy, how's that newcomer doing?" "Tano? He's already able to handle jobs on his own," Levy said. "For now, it's only smaller commissions within Magnolia, but he's really strong." She thought for a moment, then added with a smile, "If it weren't for you, Rhodes, Tano might have been considered the most promising newcomer." "Oh, isn't that impressive?" Rhodes grinned. "Wait, are you complimenting him or me?" Levy blinked playfully. "Both, actually." At that moment, Myra waved to Rhodes from behind the counter. It looked like Master Makarov had something to say to him. "I'll head over first. Droy, I'll leave the plants in your care." Droy nodded. "No problem. Oh, and I have something I want to ask you for help with later." "Sure, we'll talk in detail after this," Rhodes said as he walked away. Jet and Levy watched him go, a little curious about what Droy needed help with. When Jet asked, Droy just laughed and joked. "I'm going to ask Rhodes to team up with me and Levy and replace you." Jet knew he was teasing, but he still looked grumpy. He didn't want to punch Droy either, partly because he owed him a favor, and partly because his leg injury hadn't healed yet. So he could only sulk in silence. Levy gently leaned in and whispered to comfort him. At the counter, Makarov sat cross-legged as usual. The glass beside him, once filled with wine, now held only hot water, courtesy of Myra. She was determined to take good care of the master's health, and she took the task very seriously. Makarov looked a little deflated, though. Whether it was because he had no wine to drink or because yesterday's talk with Lixus hadn't gone well, it was hard to say. "Master," Rhodes said as he approached. Seeing Myra's firm expression, he added with a teasing smile, "Drink more hot water. It's good for your health." Makarov's beard twitched upward. Was this brat deliberately trying to irritate him? Still, remembering Rhodes' contributions to the guild, Makarov decided to let it slide. "You performed very well on your last mission," the master said. Rhodes scratched the back of his head and replied modestly. "Honestly, Mirza did most of the heavy lifting. But just now, Mirza mentioned she made a major mistake during the mission, so she wants to give you part of her reward as compensation." "Huh? I don't remember Mirza making any big mistakes." "Oh." Rhodes suddenly thought of something and asked. "Wait, by mistake, does she mean she forgot to bring food when we set out?" Although he was eager to make more money these days, cheating a teammate out of their reward over something so minor wasn't something he could bring himself to do. Makarov glanced at Myra, since Mirza hadn't explained the details to him. Myra smiled and confirmed. "That's right." Mirza privately reflected on it very seriously and even said she's going to dedicate at least half her suitcase to food from now on. So it was something like that. Makarov sighed helplessly. Still, it was exactly the kind of thing Mirza would take to heart. In that case, the reward distribution will stay the same. Anyway, the message from the council's branch is that you both did an excellent job. Makarov's mood visibly brightened. Thanks to Rhodes and Mirza, he could expect a little less scolding from the council for a while. "By the way," Makarov continued, "the local guild alliance is holding a regular meeting next week. Would you like to come with me?" "Me? As your bodyguard?" Rhodes asked, half joking, but also half serious. "Of course not," Makarov said, waving it off. "I just thought it would be good for you to meet some of the other guild masters. It's nice to make connections." Rhodes was still puzzled. What level am I even at? Why would I need to meet other guild masters? Myra leaned in close to Rhodes's ear, cupping her hand around her mouth, and whispered, "Actually, the master just wants to show off a bit. He's taken Riza and me to show off before too." Oh, Rhodes nodded in sudden understanding. Then why not take Riza again? Attending the regular meeting would mean staying there for 3 to 5 days, days without making money or having time to train properly. Myra had already skipped attending before, preferring to stay behind at the guild where it was much more comfortable. Chapter 190, Why Are You Asking Me Again? Makarev sighed, looking a little troubled. "I don't know when it started, but Riza suddenly stopped wanting to attend the regular meetings with me. It wasn't just that she didn't want to go, she couldn't even stand hearing about it. Every time Makarev brought it up, Riza's expression would immediately twist in discomfort, like she was about to be sick. He couldn't figure out what young people were thinking these days. Was it because I showed off too much? He wondered. Well, maybe it was time to take someone else along to show off for a change. Myra leaned in close to Rhodes again, whispering in his ear. Actually, it's because during one of those meetings, Akaya from Blue Pegasus got a little too friendly with Riza. Rhodes instantly understood. He remembered how, not too long ago, Riza had been unusually uncomfortable after getting tangled up with Akaya during a mission. No wonder she's trying to avoid it altogether, he thought. So, what do you think? Should I go with the master? Rhodes asked. Myra thought for a moment and said warmly, it wouldn't be a bad idea. Besides, the master always ends up drinking way too much at these meetings. Sometimes he even gets drunk and causes trouble. You could help keep an eye on him. I'm not that bad. Makarov huffed indignantly. Myra puffed her cheeks and countered. Of course you are. A few years ago, you got into a drunken brawl with Master Jose from Phantom Lord. Ever since then, he's refused to attend any meetings, and our relationship with Phantom Lord has been even worse. Bah, the relationship wasn't great to begin with. Makarov grumbled. And besides, he's the one who said the Phantom Lord Guild was stronger than Fairy Tail. I won the fight, didn't I? Rhodes didn't even know how to react to that. The old man looked genuinely proud of himself. Master Jose was supposed to be one of the 10 wizard saints, still in his prime at the time, and yet, even drunk, Makarov had managed to beat him senseless. Yeah. Our master is seriously terrifying when he wants to be, Rhodes thought with admiration. But, looking around the guild now, with how chaotic it usually was, Rhodes couldn't help thinking, maybe the reason the guild's so rowdy is 90% his fault. No, make that 100%. After all, most of the biggest troublemakers were personally picked up and recruited by Makarov himself. His self-criticism wasn't exactly wrong. Is this really something to brag about, master? Myra puffed out her cheeks in mock anger. But you were the one cheering for me back then, little Myra. Makarov protested, looking a little hurt. I remember you yelling something pretty bold. Let me think. Don't think about it. Myra blurted, her face turning slightly red. That was because I was young and didn't know any better. Makarov put on a sly grin. Well, I was young too. Myra crossed her arms and said with a smirk. Sure. You were only 82 years old at the time. Rhodes suddenly froze. Wait, the master was 82 when that happened? Feeling a surge of injustice, he blurted out. That jerk Jose actually attacked an 82-year-old man? What a piece of trash. Granted. It was Jose who got beaten up, Myra quickly corrected him, laughing. An 82-year-old young man, thank you very much. Oh, right, young man. Rhodes said with a grin. Still, master, you're way too outrageous for a young person. Getting into fights at meetings like that. You too. Makarov groaned, dark lines forming on his forehead. This perfect tag team of teasing was really too much for him to handle. Rhodes and Myra burst into laughter together. Makarov hopped off the counter and headed upstairs to the second floor, already scheming about how to best show off to his old friends. Anyway, come with me to the station next Wednesday. He called out. Okay. Rhodes agreed, deciding it wouldn't hurt to see a bit more of the world outside Magnolia. Still, one thing lingered in his mind, what exactly had Myra shouted back then? When he had free time in the morning, Rhodes practiced diligently. By noon, he went about his usual work at the guild. But in the afternoon, Droy sneakily dragged him out of the guild. For the second time in his life, Rhodes found himself awkwardly sitting across from another man, sipping coffee. The scene reminded him of the time Alzak had done the same thing. Sure enough, Droy hesitated a moment, clasped his hands together, and pleaded, Rhodes, please. Teach me how to win over Levy. Rhodes fell silent. Why does this keep happening to me? I'm still single too, you know. Have you really not considered asking Locke about this? Rhodes asked. Droy shook his head. If Locke actually had any good advice, Jet would have succeeded already. So he had asked already, huh? Rhodes sighed. Then asking me won't help either. You and Levy grew up together, You should know better than anyone what kind of guy she likes. Droy looked embarrassed. Well, we did ask her once a long time ago, but Levy couldn't explain it clearly herself. Rhodes couldn't help but be confused. How did things end up like this? Childhood friends usually have such a head start. How did you and Jet manage to mess it up this badly? Please, I'm begging you. Droy said earnestly. You even managed to deal with someone as shy as Alzik. Just help me figure out a plan. Alzik and Biska's situation lately could only be described as progressing smoothly. The two of them went out on jobs together every few days, practically functioning as a fixed team now. Although they always insisted to others that they were just partners. Everyone except clueless people like Rosa could see what was going on. Jet and Droy, of course, were filled with envy and jealousy. But after the awkward incident with Levy a few months ago, they had only just managed to mend their friendship. Neither of them dared to act too rashly again. After failing to get much help from Alzik, Droy had finally gathered his courage to turn to Rhodes for help. Droy had seized the perfect opportunity while Rhodes was asking him to help take care of the potted plants. Rhodes wanted to say this wasn't exactly a difficult situation. Alzik and Biska already had feelings for each other, it was just a matter of one of them taking the first step. All Rhodes had done was help create the right opportunity. But Droy and Levy, they had already formed a fixed team, practically spending every day together, yet there was still no progress. You couldn't even call it slow. In Droy's case, his love for Levy was entirely one-sided, the kind where if he took one step forward, Levy would instinctively take 2 steps back. I'm no love guru. What am I supposed to do with a situation like this? Rhodes thought, rubbing his temples. Let me think. Rhodes paused for a moment before saying, my impression is that Levy's usually cheerful, but deep down, she can be a little timid and lacking in self-confidence, right? Droy looked surprised. How can that be? Levy's super strong, smart, and amazing in every way. There was no saving this. Rhodes genuinely wanted to say goodbye right then and there. This guy's looking at Levy through the thickest rose-colored glasses I've ever seen. Droy, realizing something was off, quickly asked, well, what do you think? Rhodes thought carefully and said, I think Levy probably likes someone who feels mature and dependable. I can ask someone else to help get you some more specific hints. After that, it's up to you. There was no way he was going to ask Levy directly himself. If it got misunderstood, things would get way too awkward. He might as well have Myra ask. She loved this kind of gossip and matchmaking stuff anyway. Thanks. That's more than enough. Droy said enthusiastically, feeling like he had already pulled ahead of Jet just by getting this much help. You're welcome. Just remember to take good care of my potted plants. Rhodes said with a sigh. Alas, for the sake of my 3 sons, even a father has to run around asking for help. Chapter 191, Millionaire Rhodes. Rhodes genuinely thought Droy needed to mature and become more reliable. He didn't need to be incredibly strong, being dependable would already go a long way. The most important thing was not to end up like Jet, who often dragged their missions down. But Droy didn't seem to understand that. He always thought he couldn't win over Levy simply because he hadn't confessed properly or wasn't pursuing her the right way. Rhodes could only remind him gently this time, and maybe again next time. If Droy still refused to believe him, there was nothing more he could do. So it's that kind of thing again? Myra said with interest, leaning in eagerly. Why do they always come to you for advice? How should I know? Rhodes said helplessly. I'm not even in a relationship myself. At least, not officially. Anyway, I'll leave it to you. He said. Just quietly find out what type of person Levy likes. No problem. Leave it to me. Myra said confidently. Rhodes trusted Myra's gossip network. Her intelligence-gathering skills in matters like these were practically unrivaled. After handing off that little mission, Rhodes wandered over to the guild's bulletin board, browsed for a while, and seeing no jobs worth taking, he went out back to practice again. 2 days flew by in a blink. The council finally sent someone to deliver the reward for their last mission. Instead of receiving 270 neatly stacked large bills, they were given a single check that could be cashed at any major bank in the Kingdom of Fiore. Yes, this world had banks too. Although dark guilds occasionally targeted them, the major banks had excellent security measures and rarely suffered real losses. Since coming to this world over half a year ago, Rhodes had never seen terms like financial crisis pop up in newspapers or guild newsletters. This showed that Fiore's economy was pretty stable, and the royal family did not mess around with the economy. Banks here were generally reliable. Myra, as usual, was responsible for verifying the check and logging the reward into the guild's records. Meanwhile, Mirza and Rhodes needed to answer a few questions from the investigators the council had sent along. The first thing they asked about was the casualties among the black magic cult members. When the council's cleanup team had arrived on the scene, They found that out of the more than 50 cultists, over a dozen had died, and several others were gravely injured and didn't survive the journey back. Strictly speaking, such a high casualty count went beyond the normal expectations of an arrest mission. Still, considering how dangerous the mission had been, the council wasn't exactly angry. They just wanted to understand why the number of casualties had been so high. Mirza was thoroughly prepared. She calmly listed the types of magical spells the black-robed cultists had been using. She herself had used her armor to withstand hundreds of shots back then, so she had a clear understanding of their effects. The investigator diligently recorded everything she said: curses, bone-shattering spells, blood magic. It was obvious that these were lethal, highly dangerous attacks. Given that, the heavy response Mirza and Rhodes had used became entirely understandable. Rhodes added firmly, "We also had to protect the safety of 14 children at the time. Holding back against them would have been irresponsible." The investigator nodded seriously. Protecting civilians, especially children, was paramount. Regarding the altar where the demon was being summoned, the investigator asked, "Since it was already completely destroyed by the time our people arrived, could you describe what it looked like?" Mirza frowned. "Why do you even need to know about something like that? We need to assess the black magic cult's level of understanding about demons." The investigator explained. "Later, we'll have earth mages, illusion mages, and sealing specialists at the site to properly secure it." Rhodes raised an eyebrow. So they were planning to reseal the demon's birthplace with layers of earth magic, illusions, and physical seals? The council was pretty serious when it came to these matters. Mirza thought for a moment, then pulled out a sketchbook. "If that's the case, I'll try drawing it for you." "Mirza, maybe I should draw it instead," Rhodes offered. He had studied solid geometry before and knew a thing or two about technical drawing, including basic 3-view and perspective sketches. At least his drawings would be a bit more accurate than Mirza's. Heartfelt masterpieces. Mirza's eyes lit up with interest. "Oh? Are you challenging me to a drawing competition? Bring it on. Let's see your skills." Rhodes silently went to borrow a sketchbook and a pencil from Rita's. The investigator, caught in the middle, was honored to be made the referee for this impromptu contest. When he finally received both drawings and looked at Mirza's proud, confident face, he didn't know what to say. He stared at the two sketchbooks for a long time, struggling to find the right words. He wanted to give fairy tales famous Titania some face, but he also couldn't lie outright. After a long and awkward pause, he finally said, "Both of your drawings are very helpful to our investigation." "Thank you." "So, that means it's a tie?" Mirza said, looking a little disappointed. She turned to Rhodes and beamed. "I didn't expect you to be good at drawing too. Let's have another competition next time." "Ha ha. Ha." Rhodes laughed awkwardly. Honestly, his sketch was only barely understandable. It wasn't that much better than a stick figure doodle from an elementary school student. He was definitely not good at drawing. Myra came over with the registration book. "Hello, please sign here," she said with a smile. "All right. Sorry for the trouble, and thank you for cooperating with the investigation." The investigator replied politely. He quickly scribbled his name, accepted the receipt Myra handed him along with the two masterpieces, and fled from Fairy Tale as if escaping a battlefield. Myra handed the check to Rhodes. "Here's your reward. Go to the bank and cash it whenever you have time." Mirza said, "I have an appointment with the Heartcrew's designer to discuss my new armor. It's almost time." "No problem, I'm free right now." Rhodes glanced at Myra. "Well, can I be free right now? After all, leaving during working hours required approval from the boss." Myra tilted her head playfully and asked, "Is it okay?" Rhodes smiled and asked again. Then, "Can you be free too?" Mainly, he had never been to a bank before. What if he got scammed or made a mistake? It would be better if someone went with him. Myra smiled warmly. "Sure. Anyway, the guild wasn't busy at the moment, and the master was dozing off upstairs. It would be fine to step out for a bit." "That's great," Rhodes said, relieved. Mirza hurried off toward the clothing company, while Rhodes and Myra strolled leisurely toward the bank. Before they left, Myra casually tied up her hair with the hair tie Rhodes had given her. Rhodes, making sure to stay warm, wrapped the scarf Myra had knitted for him around his neck. The sky was a clear blue. An arched bridge stretched over a gentle canal that hadn't frozen over. The winter sun shone down warmly. And the person walking beside him was someone he wanted to stay with for a lifetime. The bank was still operating in the traditional paper-based style, and business efficiency was, to put it kindly, average. Rhodes opened his own account, deposited 1 million jewels from the check, and kept 350,000 jewels in cash for paying off debts and pocket money. The remaining 1.35 million jewels were transferred directly into Riz's account. For identification, the bank used magic crystals that scanned the wizard's face and guild emblem to verify their identity. When Rhodes finally left the bank, holding a stack of banknotes and a small passbook, everything still felt a little unreal. Am I really a millionaire now? Even though the unit was in jewels, seeing such a long string of zeros made him feel ridiculously happy. Putting on his best impression of a flashy rich guy, Rhodes said, "Come on, I'm treating you today. Order whatever you want." "Okay." Myra giggled, feeling his joy and sharing in it herself. Actually, she had been earning quite a lot of money recently too. Maybe next time, she should be the one treating him. Chapter 192, A Good Day. Myra didn't take advantage of Rhodes just because he said he was rich. Instead, she simply chose a cozy little dessert shop. The two of them sat for a while, chatting and exchanging information about Levy. Rhodes also passed along Droy's latest updates. "Aren't you planning to team up with them this time?" Myra asked, looking forward to the drama that might unfold with Rhodes and the Shadowgear team. "No." Rhodes shook his head. "I feel like it's not good to interfere too much. Besides, Droy seems pretty confident about it." "That's true," Myra said, smiling as if she couldn't wait to see what would happen. They chatted casually for a while. As they talked, Myra, halfway through her cake, habitually pinched her waist, a little worried about her figure. Without thinking, Rhodes naturally reached out to take her plate. Myra paused, realizing something felt off. Since when had they gotten this comfortable with each other? Before Rhodes could start eating, Myra quickly pulled the plate back, scooped up a huge bite of cake with her fork, and stuffed it into her mouth, all while giving Rhodes a fierce stare. Rhodes blinked in confusion. "Did I say something wrong?" he wondered. After they left the dessert shop, Myra quickly returned to her normal cheerful self and even seemed to be in an even better mood. Rhodes was still a little baffled. Why was she glaring at me just now? Seeing his confused face only made Myra feel better. She even promised to treat him to something different next time. Rhodes agreed a little dazedly. Sometimes, girls' thoughts are just impossible to understand. When they returned to the guild, the moment Rhodes stepped through the door, Gray rushed over and grabbed him. "Finally. You're back, Rhodes. I need your help with something." Rhodes instinctively blurted out. "No way, you too?" Gray blinked, confused. "Huh? Is there someone else?" Realizing he might have misunderstood, Rhodes quickly calmed himself. Never mind. What do you want to ask?" "It's about the mission you did with Urza." Rhodes froze for a second. "Wait, does this guy like Urza?" No, he quickly corrected himself. Gray looked serious. His focus was clearly on the mission, not Urza. Rhodes had just been influenced by Droy's love problems these past few days and was thinking nonsense. "What exactly do you want to know?" Rhodes asked. "I should warn you first, I might not be able to tell you everything. Some details about council missions are confidential. There were rules every wizard had to follow. Unless something directly impacted another member, mission information wasn't supposed to be shared." Gray's expression turned serious. "It's about the demon." Rhodes' eyes widened. "Where did you hear that?" "The day before yesterday, on my way to work, I overheard people talking. They said fairy tale wizards defeated a demon. They described a red-haired female knight and a powerful beast tamer. I figured it must have been you." "Beast tamer?" Rhodes' face darkened. "What kind of lousy nickname is that? And what about the council's so-called confidentiality? Even the possibility that their target might be a demon had already leaked out?" "Come with me," Rhodes said firmly. He pulled Gray along to find Myra, repeating everything Gray had told him and asking if this situation might cause any problems. Gray added a few more details, giving a brief report about his own mission in the process. Myra thought for a moment, then said, "I don't think this necessarily means the council leaked anything. The demons they mentioned to Gray were probably just the members of the black magic cult. Considering what those people were doing, it wouldn't be wrong to call them demonic, right?" Rhodes nodded. "That makes sense." Gray must have misunderstood. "Hold on a second," Gray suddenly said, catching the real issue. "Are you saying there was an actual demon?" Rhodes immediately realized his mistake and groaned. "Ah. I leaked the information, didn't I?" Myra smiled reassuringly. "It's fine. The demon didn't actually appear, right? Technically, since it wasn't fully summoned during the mission, it's okay to tell Gray. And besides," she added playfully, "I think the title, Beast Tamer, suits you." "Let's not talk about that," Rhodes said, utterly helpless. "Nicknames are given by others, not chosen by yourself," he thought bitterly. There's no way to change it now. After gathering his thoughts, he simply summarized everything for Gray. There was a black magic cult trying to summon the flesh-eating demon Carniber from the Book of Ziraf. Mirza and I stopped them before they could complete the ritual. We destroyed the altar and captured all the cult members. They didn't summon it. Gray exhaled deeply, the tension draining from his body. Thank you. Hey. Rhodes scratched his head. He didn't quite understand why Gray was thanking him so seriously and turned to Myra for answers. I'm not sure about all the details. Myra whispered softly. But I heard that about 10 years ago, Gray's hometown was destroyed by a demon. She added quietly. He might have lost family back then. Even Gray's strange habit of stripping off his clothes probably started around that time. Another child with a heartbreaking past. Rhodes didn't know what to say, he could only feel sympathy. If strange habits are tied to sad experiences. He wondered, then what about Mirza and her obsession with wearing armor? Now that he thought about it, Mirza did show some odd behavior during their last mission too. But when Rhodes asked, even Myra didn't know the full story behind it. Someone once asked Mirza about her past. Myra said quietly. But she refused to say anything. It's like her life only truly began after joining the guild. Maybe it was so painful she doesn't even want to remember it. She noticed the worry in Rhodes' eyes for both Gray and Mirza and gently comforted him. It's all right. No matter what happened before, we've all made it here, haven't we? As long as we have the guild, we can keep moving forward. Yeah. Rhodes nodded thoughtfully. Then, he suddenly let out a big yawn, feeling a wave of sleepiness wash over him. Myra, about to scold him for dozing off while she was speaking from the heart, suddenly felt her own eyelids grow heavy too. Is it Miss Togan again? She muttered. She stumbled forward, and Rhodes instinctively reached out to catch her. Both of them ended up slumping against the counter, fast asleep. Of course, the rest of the guild members were no better. Everyone had collapsed into naps all across the tavern. Miss Togan casually greeted the master, picked a request off the job board, and then lifted the sleep magic before disappearing as quietly as he came. Everyone slowly woke up one after another, and as usual, the guild filled with groggy complaints and cursing. Rhodes opened his eyes, immediately feeling a familiar weight on his shoulder and promptly decided to pretend to stay asleep for a little longer. But only a few seconds later, the warmth vanished, and he felt a sharp pinch at his waist. Ouch, ouch. Rhodes yelped, rubbing his side. Myra retracted her hand with a small blush on her cheeks. I told you to wake up. Don't pretend to be asleep. Still rubbing the sore spot, Rhodes grumbled. How do you even know I was pretending? Intuition. Myra said matter-of-factly, turning her head away with a little huff. Intuition? Rhodes muttered in his heart. What are you, a psychic wizard? He honestly thought she was just making things up. But all in all, it wasn't a bad way to wake up. Besides, it was almost time to go back to training. Rhodes looked up and spotted Mikariv still sitting on the second floor. Master. He called. Are you free right now? Chapter 193, Void Drubs and Void Mites. The new summon turned out to be 3 ugly, purple bugs. At first, Rhodes had thought that the Rift Herald should appear there, but now he realized this wasn't a monster he recognized. He suspected that the game world might have secretly updated while he was away. Judging by their purple color, it was obvious these creatures probably had some connection to the Void. Rhodes only hoped they wouldn't be tangled up in some overly complicated, mysterious lore like some other monsters he had encountered. So far, all the monsters he had summoned obeyed his commands faithfully and never caused any trouble. Logically speaking, these should be no different. Still, out of caution, Rhodes decided it was safer to summon them for the first time out in the countryside. In the woods outside Magnolia, Mikariv led Rhodes to a wide, open clearing. You're still being cautious after all this time. Mikariv said, glancing at the small cage in Rhodes's hand. What's that for? I originally wanted to use white mice. Rhodes explained. But since I couldn't find any, I brought white rabbits instead. I'm planning to have them test if the monsters are dangerous. You really are. Mikariv shook his head. Forget it, let's get started. Alright, but can you set up a defensive barrier first? Rhodes asked carefully. He wasn't about to take chances if the summon went wrong. Mikariv lifted a finger, conjuring a golden ball of light. Then, 2 shimmering magic circles materialized in front of them like sturdy shields. Like this? Maybe something stronger? Like, say, fairy sphere? Mikariv raised an eyebrow. How do you know about fairy sphere? I stumbled across it in the library. Rhodes said. Any book with an old cover usually feels like a hidden treasure. But seriously. Is it really okay to leave books about super magic just lying around for anyone to read? Knowledge should be passed down. Mikariv replied with a chuckle. If we lock it away, all the hard work of those before us would be wasted. If you can learn it, any magic in the library is yours. So? Have you learned fairy sphere? Not even close. Rhodes groaned. Just reading a few pages made my head spin. It was incredibly frustrating. Seeing a legendary defensive spell right there in a book, but knowing he couldn't master it yet, felt almost cruel. That's normal, Makarov said calmly. Half a year ago, you didn't even have a basic magic foundation. You can't expect to master Fairy Sphere overnight. Unless he used some ancient technique to forcibly instill the knowledge, even with hard work, Rhodes would need another year or two of solid training before he could attempt it. So, Rhodes sighed. You should use Fairy Sphere now, just to make sure we're safe. Makarov scowled. You know it's super magic. Even I can't just toss it around whenever I like. Still, unable to refuse Rhodes's pleading, Makarov relented and showed off a bit. Maximum defensive magic, 3 pillars of the gods. Golden magic circles bloomed beneath Makarov's feet. 3 massive stone pillars erupted from the ground, surrounding the clearing and standing tall at the edges of the magic circle, forming an impregnable barrier. Wow, wow. This is awesome. Rhodes finally looked satisfied. He walked to the edge of the magic circle, clutching the pendant, and recited the summoning incantation he had used back when he didn't even know the names of his summoned creatures. 3 purple monsters materialized outside the defensive magic circle. Each one was taller than a person, with a single horn on its head, a mouth full of jagged fangs, half-lidded eyes, and strange purple eggs clinging to its neck. Looking closer, there seemed to be small shadows wriggling inside the eggs. Rhodes gave a very fair evaluation. These bugs were definitely on the ugly side, and honestly, a little creepy too. Up until now, the ugliest creature he had summoned was the Gromp, but this was on a whole different level. Even Makarov, watching from behind, could understand why Rhodes had insisted on preparing such a strong defensive magic circle. No wonder the kid had gone to such lengths to be cautious. These summoned beasts practically radiated an eerie, sinister aura. Back up. Stop. Shake your head. Open your mouth. Close your mouth. Rhodes tested a few simple commands, and the monsters responded just like the others before them. Then he opened the cage and released a little white rabbit. Catch it, but don't hurt it. The rabbit, terrified at the sight of the monstrous bugs, stumbled in panic and took off running. The 3 bugs made a few lumbering steps forward, and suddenly, the purple-red eggs on their backs burst open. 12 blue larvae, each about the size of a basketball, jumped out. When they stood upright, they reached about knee-height. The larvae immediately swarmed after the rabbit, biting its ears, nipping at its legs, while the ones that couldn't squeeze in spun around restlessly at the edge of the pile. Meanwhile, the broken eggs on the mother bug's backs slowly began to regenerate, returning to their full shape in about 10 seconds. The mother bugs let out low rumbles, and the larvae obediently pushed the rabbit back toward them. The ones that hadn't managed to latch on earlier still jostled and circled around, eager to join in. It seemed that, like the other summoned beasts, the mother bugs possessed a fair amount of independent thought and could understand basic commands, but the little larvae clearly weren't very smart. Squatting at the edge of the magic circle, Rhodes watched carefully for a while, making sure the poor rabbit showed no signs of infection or strange mutations. Once he was sure everything was safe, he finally stepped closer to the mother bugs. They're called void drub. Rhodes explained, turning to Makarov. Their attack power is average, their defense is pretty mediocre, and their speed isn't anything special either. As for magic consumption, it feels about the same as red buff and blue buff. He gave a simple rundown of the creature's abilities. Makarov asked. Just ordinary summoned beasts, then? What about the little ones? The smaller ones are called void mites. From what I can tell, each void drub can continuously spawn void mites. They can produce about 4 void mites every 12 seconds. Each one produces 4 every 12 seconds, and with 3 of them, that's 12 every 12 seconds, 60 per minute. If they kept it non-stop for 24 hours, that would be over 80,000 void mites in a single day. Makarov was floored by the number. 80,000 void mites, each bigger than a harpy, would be enough to swarm and blanket the entire forest. In an ideal situation, this wasn't just summoning a few creatures. It was practically building an army with just one person. Even if each void mite wasn't individually that powerful, sheer numbers alone were terrifying. Even fighting off 80,000 ordinary rabbits would take effort, let alone these bite-happy creatures. They seemed to have some kind of special ability too. Rhodes pointed at one of the stone pillars Makarov had summoned. Watch this. The eggs on the backs of the void drubs burst open again, producing another 12 void mites. The swarm of 24 bugs immediately jumped onto the stone pillars, biting and gnawing at the stone without hesitation. The forest filled with the sharp, rustling sounds of their teeth scraping against stone. Meanwhile, the 3 void drubs didn't move and close themselves. Instead, they stood a couple of meters back and began spitting dark purple magic bullets the size of a man's fist. Each magic bullet struck the pillars, burning holes into them and corroding the solid stone like acid. 12 seconds later, The eggs on their backs ruptured again, releasing another dozen void mites, who swarmed out the stone, eagerly chewing away. Makarov could only watch, speechless, as his 3 pillars of the gods, a defensive spell strong enough to withstand most attacks, were gradually eaten, riddled with holes, and finally collapsed into rubble with a resounding crash. This was not how defensive magic was supposed to fail. It wasn't that defenses couldn't be broken. Makarov had seen plenty of magic defense shattered in battle, but being chewed apart like this was just absurd. They're good at demolishing buildings. Rhodes explained awkwardly. Especially structures that have magical properties. Makarov stared at the destruction, stone-faced, and declared firmly, absolutely not. You are forbidden from summoning them anywhere near the guild. Chapter 194, I'll give you something. The great advantage of the Void Drub's ability to spawn Void Mites was that it didn't drain Rhodes' magic power at all. All the Void Mites' movements after hatching relied on their own energy. They would fight until they were either defeated or completely exhausted before disappearing. As for how long each Void Mite could last, Rhodes noticed they had already gnawed down 3 towering stone pillars without even looking tired. It was just a pity that, for now, he couldn't think of any real way to put this ability to good use. He couldn't exactly release a swarm to tear down the guild just because he was bored. As for using swarm tactics, he wasn't at war, and neither was the Kingdom of Fiore. In short, he would have to slowly explore the potential of this ability over time. At the very least, it was nice to have more disposable helpers in case he encountered rogue wild monsters in the future. Facing the master's stern request, Rhodes immediately promised that he would never cause any trouble inside the guild. He really didn't have any interest in tearing the place down. Makarov nodded, satisfied. When it came to self-control, Rhodes was reliable. So far, the worst damage he had caused was just creating a hole in the backyard wall. Compared to some of the other guild members, Rhodes was practically a model citizen. Time passed as Rhodes continued working, training, and living his usual steady life. Before he knew it, it was already the day before he was supposed to accompany Master Makarov to the regular guild meeting. Droy had done an excellent job taking care of Rhodes' 3 sons. The succulent leaves were plump and vibrant, while the 2 orchids had been repotted into containers better suited to their needs, and the soil had been properly refreshed. Droy had really gone above and beyond. When he returned the plants, he also gave Rhodes a full list of care instructions to make sure they stayed healthy this time. It was just a shame that Droy's love life hadn't made any progress. Rhodes had already passed along what Myra found out about Levy's possible ideal type. But Droy, brimming with confidence, insisted that I'm exactly her type. While continuing to be weirdly jealous of Jet. Rhodes really didn't know what to do anymore. Droy would beg for advice, ignore it when given, and insist on doing things his own way anyway. At this point, he figured it was better to just let him be. Rhodes had his own matters to focus on. What should I prepare for this regular meeting anyway? Rhodes wondered aloud. Naturally, when it came to this sort of thing, it was best to ask the senior guild expert, Miss Mara Jane. You don't need to prepare anything special, Myra said lightly. Just treat it like a little vacation. It'll last about 3 to 5 days. Just be ready to go. 3 to 5 days. Rhodes muttered, thinking it over. Will my newly raised sons be alright while I'm gone? Still using that strange way of addressing them, Myra said helplessly. It should be fine if it's only for a few days, right? Or you could ask Droy to help out a little longer? It wouldn't feel right to keep bothering him. Rhodes smiled and stuffed something into Myra's hand. Here. This is for you. Myra opened her palm. Sitting there was a key with a small charm for peace and safety dangling from it. It's the key to my house. Rhodes said a little shyly. I was hoping you could check in on my sons while I'm away. And, I'll bring back some souvenirs for you. Some people could act all calm and casual on the outside, but deep down, they were ridiculously nervous. This was one of those impulsive moments. If Myra rejected him, Rhodes was sure he'd be uncomfortable about it for days. What? Sons? Levy, who happened to overhear, gasped loudly. You even have sons, wait, what? Levy, don't talk nonsense. Myra quickly covered Levy's mouth, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. But it was too late. Half the guild had already heard it. For a moment, there was stunned silence around the counter. Then came the uproar, an avalanche of teasing and peering voices all directed at Rhodes. Think about it, you idiots. Rhodes snapped, trying to defend himself. I've only been here for a little over half a year. How could I possibly have a son already? It's potted plants, okay? Just potted plants. Droy can vouch for me. The explanation made sense, logically. But nobody cared about logic at this point. After all, they had been itching for a reason to mess with Rhodes for a while, and now they had the perfect excuse. Myra, who had initially blushed, quickly returned to her usual calm. She even propped her chin in her hand, smiling mischievously as she watched Rhodes struggle. Usually, she was the one reading and laughing at other people's gossip. Now she was at the center of it herself, and honestly, it felt kind of fun. Rhodes' frantic, hopeless explanations were just too entertaining. Amid the teasing, Myra quietly lifted the key Rhodes had given her, gazed at it for a moment, and then carefully tucked it into her bag. After a moment's thought, she opened her hand again, removed the little charm hanging from the key, and gently placed it into Rhodes' palm. Rhodes froze. He could feel Myra's fingers briefly brush against his hand before she pulled away, smiling sweetly. For some reason, he thought her smile looked even more beautiful than usual. Feeling the warmth of the charm in his palm, Rhodes let out a long breath. Forget it. He didn't feel like arguing with those idiots anymore. Humphrey. One day, I'll have 3 real sons and show you all. The local guild alliance was, strictly speaking, more of an unofficial organization. Since the Magic Council's jurisdiction covered the entire continent of Ishkar, it was inevitable that some areas would fall beyond its immediate reach. Because of this, the guild masters of the legal guilds in each region would often form alliances themselves, meeting regularly to discuss matters big and small. These meetings also helped maintain friendly ties between the guilds. Occasionally, when particularly difficult jobs came up, they would coordinate and send their top wizards to work together on special joint missions. It was also quite common for old friends to show off their guild's most outstanding wizards to one another. This time, the one being shown off was likely to be Rhodes, who was being dragged along by Makarov for that very purpose. Right now, Rhodes was sitting on a train with the master, heading toward Kroba City. They would cross the bridge spanning the Kroba Grand Canyon before reaching their destination. The venue for the meeting wasn't in the city center but in a large villa located in the outskirts. Makarov had mentioned that the distance wasn't too far, so Rhodes, feeling lazy about renting a carriage, simply summoned his scuttle crab. Riding a crab was fast and steady, but there were some downsides, especially in winter. As soon as it picked up speed, the cold wind howled past. Anyone who had ever ridden a motorcycle in winter could sympathize. Luckily, Rhodes had bundled up properly,